it got us into the connection discussion where I was talking about like, well, we're just our air is just a soup of molecules. Everything's touching. So when you see lightning go, it's finding the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. So if that means everything's connected and we're all made up of the same thing, then we're just a giant mycelium network, and we're just moving through the soup.
Yeah.
So like if you could just send information through the soup like electricity. Like, that's what we're doing with Bluetooth and radio frequencies, all that shit. We're just blasting through this mass. There's mass there. Mm-hmm. It's not just nothing. The idea that it's nothing is crazy. Yeah. It's if you separate something in a drink container and there's all those different layers, they're all something. They're just separated.
I like you called it soup.
Soup.
It's definitely soup.
It's layered soup of molecules and mass and density. And we're just shooting rays of Bluetooth all through it.
It is you.
It is you.
It is you.
And you're connected to all of it.
Literally just, I mean, damn, we could almost get into it right off this because, like, that's what I was talking about.
The connective tissue of reality.
How death is defined, you know? Like, you know, like what is actually death, but then how there's still life in your body. You are not alive, but there is life in your body, right? Yeah. And it's like you said, the soup parts that you're made of are actually still holding life, and that shit's crazy. Or energy, you know? It's like you said, energy.
Yeah. It'd be like if the potatoes in your soup started to go bad, but the rest of it was pretty good. Right. Like the potatoes were you, and so like the potatoes are gone, but like, you know, like the broth and everything's still kind of warm, and like if you just pop that back in the microwave, you might be able to get those potatoes back. So
true. Because literally Jessica all the time she'd be like, there's something rotten on here. I'm like, cut that shit out and then just eat the rest of it. You know what I mean? Like if you have an apple, he said it's got like a little rot on the edge, the rest of the apple's still good. I mean, it's just that little part that's rotten.
But you have to be careful though, because that it's not the same for bread and cheese.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you can't really see how it's
affected.
Yeah,
I guess. But I've always heard that like
that
rule applies for like many like fruits and vegetables. Like if it's got a little rot, you can just cut that off, and the rest of it's good. Yeah. But they were like, when it comes to bread and cheese though, like if you see some mold on some cheese, the whole cheese is done. It's like
I feel that. But the idea still remains that not everything. It might be bad for you, the whole cheese, but it's not all dead. Like all the cheese has not died.
I mean, technically.
The cheese died a long time ago.
Technically, when your body dies, there's really nothing dead about it because it's all being decayed by living things.
Well, yeah, it just transmutes through the mycelium.
Well, the bacteria that breaks it down and allows the decomposing process to happen, those are all living things, and they're just eating you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bacteria that's processing
maggots and stuff. Like even maggots, they're not even single-celled. Like they're eating you alive, like eating you dead, but they're alive.
Yeah, and you can go up that macro scale too of flies and animals and
the weirdest thing about it is that the bacteria that causes the decomposition is with you all the time. It just doesn't like you're just fighting it off all the time.
Yeah, true. Like your body's just like nah, it's cool. Like maintain the boundary.
When it's done.
Yeah.
They were like, "Hey, party time! This nigga's done."
It's like when you're cat and you have a symbiotic relationship, but you die and it eats your eyelids. Like,
does it do that?
Cats might just if they're starving.
So I'm not a cat person. See?
I mean, think about it. If you were starving and there was just like a dead thing in there that you once loved, you'd probably eat it.
I mean, I would eat you all if it was like survival.
Yeah, I even proposed in high school that we just find some way to turn our dead people into a power source.
Just
not necessarily eat them.
Yeah, the bodies.
We let the robots eat them. We talked about this.
Yeah, we let the robots eat them. That's a great idea.
Oh, I remember
death robots that eat the fucking bodies.
Yeah,
bodies is a power source. We did
zombie robots.
We did.
You will live on in HR 373 bipedal unit.
Yeah, go check out our robots and AI. Oh my episode.
But we definitely.
It's a great technology episode we did.
But you know, it's so weird to me though. How not weird? I know it's weird to me. People have this attachment to their body though. Like what is you is gone. There's no life. Like we said, the life has left the body. But then people are really arguing about like, well, you better bury me or you better burn me or like I want to be entombed or don't give away my organs. Or I'm like, what? Like this doesn't make any. This is like you eating a Twinkie, but then arguing with other people about what you should do with the wrapper. Which I guess we do that, but still,
and with death, it's like they don't see it as the final process. Since the dawn of civilization, they've looked at it like, oh, we're going to sacrifice you to this god, which will appease him, and then if you're, a king or a priest, we'll put you in a tomb that's very specifically for your travel to the afterlife, because this is just a step. There's many phases. That's what everyone's.
That's what
I think everybody understands, or at least people, for some reason, for whatever reason, people believe that the idea of property rights and self-ownership and the things that are yours, that continues on after you're dead, which is why we have systems for giving away the things that you possess after you're dead, because still your things, like you're dead, but like they're, for some reason, modern, like ancient and modern societies both say that property rights extend past the life of the person whose property it was, or just self-ownership if you think about it that way, because like you own your body, so you get to decide what happens to it when your consciousness leaves. But the point that you're pointing out, I think, which is a more fundamental point, is why would you care?
Well, yeah, right?
Now, maybe for your body, that's one thing. But I guess if you're talking about, like, your estate, you might want that to go to specific people.
I guess.
But, I mean...
It still has value.
It still has value.
Yeah.
Your body really doesn't have anything. They're not going to do anything
What
with
are
it.
they going to do with it? It's trash. It's just trash.
Yeah, you're talking about the value beans that you've collected over your lifetime. And you want to make sure that when you die, you distribute the value beans proportionally. Yeah, like, because you're delivering a message with those. You're saying, like... Fuck my nephew. I want to give all my value beans to Uncle Jim. Well, Uncle Jim's a racist. Well, you know, he's fine.
You want to say, you have something to say.
I mean, I guess that's one way to do it.
That's true.
That's one reason.
Well, I'm saying,
one
like,
thing people do with their wills.
That's 100%. There's
it's the big last fuck you.
Yeah. We looked at what was it, that Netflix documentary, Evil Genius? Was that what it was called? And at the end, when they talk about the father that's still alive and the daughter that was accused or whatever, the dad's like, "Oh, I wrote her out of my will a long time ago," and it was like the first thing he said about her. That was like
the daughter. Was that the same documentary?
Yeah, the daughter is the one that's accused that's in prison. The dad is still alive.
I've never seen it.
The daughter meaning the woman who was the evil genius.
Yes. The daughter of the dad at the end.
Name? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, either way, as far as I'm concerned, it's like arguing what you're gonna do with this peel on this, like, you know, like, I mean, it just doesn't. Who cares? You know, do whatever the hell you want with it. Anyway.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
What's up, Internet? How you doing, man?
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome back for the first time. We're in a whole new setup. I know it probably doesn't look much like that to you.
That different to you, but to us, it looks very different. You may have
different.
seen the post on Instagram that is not yet as I am speaking on Instagram, but by the time you hear these words, it will be on Instagram.
Yes.
If you look at there, you can see what this setup looks like. Yes. Little BTS for you.
Yeah, so definitely a good reason to go.
So yeah, head to our Instagram and follow us,
Instagram,
because you can see BTS shit like that.
Yeah. Anyway, today a heavy topic. I don't know. How you feel? Heavy topic?
It's the heaviest topic.
Heaviest topic.
We're talking about life and death.
I feel like I'm gonna laugh a lot.
Yeah, I think I've come to grips with it.
I laugh at everything.
It is a heavy topic, like, especially if you haven't talked about it a lot. Yeah. I think we even prefaced it. I was like, well, boys, you know, we're gonna have to deal with our existential, you know, like dread, you know, and the fact that one day you're gonna die. That's pretty much what this episode's about. We're gonna talk about death a little bit, and about our relationship with death as human beings and how it affects us.
How we understand that.
Yeah, all through society and time. I think John's going to talk a little bit about the history.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you a little bit into the cultures, the gods, take you around a little bit of the history, and look at some weird shit of people trying to evade death. You know, this idea of anti-aging that Mac's going to take us into, and the science side of things.
21st century versions of what he's going to talk about.
Right. And, you know, I just, you know me, I'm usually philosophy driven. I got some ideas on just how we experience the death and what it means to die.
Our relationship
near-death experiences.
Near-death experiences.
Yeah, I saw you
definitely going to talk about that.
Bit.
Just, you know, what we can learn from other people who have maybe peaked on the other side of death, you know. And either way, you know, just the whole side of it.
Should be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, you know, and where I'm really gonna break it open is we all afraid of death, I think, you know.
Yeah,
like
at some level, of course.
Yeah, and that's what I've noticed. Like when I sit out to, what is your relationship with death? Not, I know what mine is, you know, but I know where it's changed. It's changed over years, my relationship with it. But when I look out at society and just people in general, I see most people they're afraid of death. You're afraid of dying. I think it's the biggest fear, you know. Right.
Yeah, I mean, and as I always say, I think that people act out their beliefs more than they speak out their beliefs. And so I think just based on the way that people act, you all eat, you all do the things that postpone the death. So it's like we all want to, at least, you might not articulate that you're afraid of it, but you're trying to get away from it as much as you can.
Oh, for sure.
You know, maybe not as much as you'd like to, but at some level, you're like, I probably don't want to die today. At least most people are.
Most people are. Dude, we've talked about that the suicide episode, about how some people do feel like they want to go just to like leave this place. But I think if you have some type of attachment here, whatever, you know, like even if it's not like you're having the best time, if you love somebody or there's just anything of value to in the world, and there's tons of things in the world, then you don't want to let that go. You know what I mean? Like you don't like the idea of like everything coming to an end. You're
right, though. People don't want to confront that death aspect because, you know, people will smoke cigarettes every day and they'll be like, well, I'm scared of dying.
Right.
And it's like, well, you're putting a poison inside your body that everybody knows kills you faster. So maybe stop poisoning yourself.
Yeah.
You know, if you're, because, you know, I think about death and the fear of death as like, okay, when you're driving around, are you constantly thinking about getting smashed by another car? Some people are. Yeah. Some people drive super defensively, and that fear of death is constantly traveling with them as they're driving around. And then you see other motherfuckers that are just zamming through traffic like Tokyo Drift. And do they necessarily fear death less, or is it confidence? Like, what is that?
Threat assessment. You know what I mean? Risk assessment. I think everybody has different risk assessment, and then that's what it gets down to is like, what do you think? But also, when you were talking about it, the first thing that came to my head, and we've talked about this plenty of times too, is the frog in the pot of water analogy. Yep. You know, it's like with the cigarette or with food or things that is just slow over time, over years and years, where you can't see the effects. Then
gradual.
Right. You don't know that it's killing you. I mean, really, like I think
that's one of the biggest things is that people they inherently know that they're going to die, but they kind of repress it. They don't think about it. They don't keep that in mind. So that's why day to day they can do a lot of things that you could make an argument to be like, well, you're actually ensuring that you're going to die sooner by doing these things. And that would be a concept new to them because, like you said, they're not thinking about their mortality
conscious
every
fear,
day.
subconscious fear.
Right. Like you tend to, I mean, I'd say for most people, they tend to only question their mortality when it's at their door.
When
it's right there staring at you in the face, that's when you start thinking like, oh shit, there it is, my life. Yeah. Oh no, I didn't do what I wanted.
Which, damn, we do that all the time, right?
Most people
took my life for granted.
Took it for granted. Didn't know what I had.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's one of the key issues with death is that I think that we've become so uncomfortable with it that we don't even think about it at all until it's too late.
It's one of those things that drives me nuts in that realm about it too, though, because there's things that are just fundamental about life, and the weirdest things, the things that are fundamental, are all the things we don't talk about.
Yep.
You know, it's
like, we don't talk about death.
You don't talk about death. You don't talk about money. You don't talk about sex. You don't talk about emotions. Yep. Like these are all the things that it is to be human, but these are all the things.
These are the few things that are universally shared amongst almost all of us, and like those are the things that you literally cannot talk about at all. They're like, no, that's off.
Did you guys get brought to many open casket funerals?
Oh no, I have not. I don't think I've ever been to a single one.
I'm trying to remember. Well, I've only been to one funeral. I think I've been and that was my grandfather's
never
funeral,
open casket.
But I don't think
never
it was
an open
casket. Yeah.
I did see my grandmother passed away like in our home, so like there was the next morning where she was dead.
A dead person
passed away. Yeah. And I don't really remember it. I'm talking about it like I remember it, but like I don't really.
You're young and
yeah. I was younger. I was probably about 7 or 8 maybe, and so but I remember that whole experience, and I remember my grandmother dying in our house. You know, she had cancer, and so I remember her living there for like she moved in with my mom and us, and so then I remember watching her deteriorate, and then just kind of like passing away. But I remember crying, and all that stuff. Yeah. But it's like other things as a kid, you know what I mean? You just do. It's hard to process trauma as a child because you don't have any frames of reference.
You have no idea.
You just don't know what it means to.
I mean, really, you're only crying because you see everybody else crying. Right, like it's a social cue. You're like, oh shit, it's sad in here. Like you feel the sad energy.
Yeah.
But if somebody were to ask you, like, why are you crying? You'd be like,
she's gone.
Yeah, she's. Like you couldn't articulate what's happening to them.
Yeah, or like what it means to be gone. And so I remember that, but I'll tell you, this is funny that we're talking about this too. Is like this kind of my relationship with. So my grandmother passes away about 8 or 7, And I was told that we're really close. I don't really remember, again, because I was younger, but I guess we hung out all the time. She really pampered me, baby me, all that stuff. But then nobody really dies in my family, or I'm not close to it at all. Like, I just don't remember anything until all of a sudden my grandfather gets sick, right? On my mom's side, again, he gets cancer. We have a lot of cancer in our family.
It's an American tradition.
Yeah, I guess so, right? Yeah, it's
it
definitely on the rampant. And they're from, like, the Midwest, too. Trust me, yeah, it's right up in that alley. So he gets sick, and then they just start dying. Like, my grandfather, my great uncle, like his brother, then his brother's brother, like all the brothers, you know. And
couple
so
of aunts now.
Yeah, everybody keeps dying, and everybody's like, yo, by this time I'm in high school and stuff, and they're like, hey, your grandfather passed away. Now I'm again probably about as close with my grandmother as I am with my grandfather, which is not much. Like, you know, I've seen him a couple summers and stuff, but I remember just being like,
damn,
yeah, like, oof.
That sucks.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
And somebody I looked up to, somebody I loved, somebody I cared about. But I guess I just, from that first time till now, I just be like, y'all know this is happening, right?
Yeah, like, how am I supposed to feel?
Like, we understand that this happens to every single person. It's like, hey, you heard John Allen got skin, right? I'm like, what?
Hey, did you hear that Sherrod's hair curls?
It got curly hair, like, you know what I mean? Like, these are things that are fundamental facts of humanity. Is like, this person died, and that's a shame. You know, like, you're gonna miss them, their presence. But I can get on this because we should, about how I feel about how I can cope with death, like what my coping mechanism. But either way, at the time, I felt like I'm just numb to it. That's my point. I'm numb to it. I used to specifically say out loud that I would only cry if my brother died. Like, that was the person I ran through, like, a list of, like, self-assessment. I'm like, my mom died today. Like, would I cry? I don't know why I cared about whether or not I would cry, but I was just like, would I cry? And I was like, I don't think I'd cry, honestly. Like, I think this changed. At the time, I didn't really fuck with her.
Yeah. It's hard to cry for people you don't like right now.
Yeah, but either way, I just kind of was like, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, like you said, same thing. Like, I had the same experience with when our grandfather passed away. I was about that 7 or 8 age or something like that. And so I had the exact same experience. I remember them taking me to the hospital like the day before. And I remember like them being like, oh, you know, like, we're going to say goodbye to grandpa. And like, you know, that was because partially we were leaving soon because we knew he was about to die, but also they knew he was going to die. And like literally hours after I had left the hospital from, you know, saying later, he was dead. And like, I remember the funeral, and I just, you know, like, I remember not knowing what was going on. Yeah. And I remember, and then, like you said, since then, there's been so many people who are, I mean, they're on the fringe of my life. You know, I met these people a handful of times. Yeah. So when I hear that they're dying, I'm like, oh, I mean, it's sad, but I don't know. But then again, that's what I'm saying is that I've never had anybody super close to me pass away.
True.
Like, even my friend Luis, like, I would hang out with this guy every single day. And when I came back from Texas, when I moved to Cali the first time, when I came back and I was visiting, and they were like, oh, yeah, Luis passed away while you were away. And I was like, damn, that sucks. But, you know, like, I don't know. Like, I just didn't really feel it. Yeah. And so, like, I guess you could say I'm waiting till one of y'all motherfuckers dies,
right?
So I can see what it's like, because like that's really when
because
you know it's like really close to you, like you said,
your
like
mom,
your brother, your mom, and I'm sure I'll cry.
Best friend.
I look at them all like a process that it's just like food you would intake. Like, you know, I didn't really process death at all because it didn't affect me growing up. Then when we got to Iraq, that guy killed himself, the Black Hawk guy, and a Black Hawk crew chief committed suicide while we were stationed in Iraq. And I remember distinctly having to go and salute the casket as it was being loaded into, I think, a Black Hawk, but it was going to go back home. And I remember being tasked with that duty and not even thinking about death. Like, I didn't process it because I never really processed death. It was just like, oh, that guy killed himself. And I thought of it more so like a coward's way out. I've since changed my thinking a lot. I come back home, you know, I have a brief stint where I get married and my grandma dies. And I was cool with my grandma. Like, she had dementia. So there was a couple of years where we knew what was going on and we saw her and we knew she would eventually, you know, pass away. But I had a good relationship with her growing up. Grandma was pretty fucking cool. She bought me Calvin and Hobbes and Goosebumps books. Shout out to Grandma. Old Bobby Schuyler, shout out. Barbara, shout out Barbara. Anyways, So I go to her funeral, but all the stress of I just got back from Iraq. I have this terrible failing marriage. I see my wife in the airport on my way up north. Like I fly from Texas to Charlotte and then from Charlotte up, and I see her there and briefly, and it's like we get this moment, but then I gotta go. So like all these stressors going on in my life. I have to like get there. My uncle had rented a car for me to like drive there or something, and it was just all this stuff.
There's a whole lot going on.
And so I get there, and it's an open casket, and I'm looking at my dead grandma, and I'm like, what? At this point, maybe a couple months back from Iraq, like I said, married, all this stressors, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, your brother wrote like a eulogy thing. You gotta go up there and read it. And
you have to read the
I have to read
that
like
your brother
well, not
wrote.
it's not necessarily. I don't know. Eulogy is the right term, but like a
Like,
memorial
he wrote
paper.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I go up there, and I think I read it. I don't remember.
Yeah, you just
there was an anxiety
Yeah.
attack. I remember going outside and
You
having a
just-
cigarette. I remember different people coming out and talking to me throughout it, but not like a freak out. Like I didn't go out there and like head in hands and.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't scream or anything, but
like
I
you
remember,
blacked out while you gave this like
well,
speech thing.
I don't remember if I
Remember
gave
you
the
did
speech or
it,
not,
feel
but I
like-
remember going outside somewhere
like-
immediately in that vicinity and smoking a cigarette and being the only one out there for a moment because it was like not what was supposed to happen. It wasn't cigarette break time. It was John is fleeing
John needs a break
from his dead grandma time.
Yeah.
So that was to me like where I was like, boom, like death just hit me like a ton of
Yeah.
bricks, like I lost grandma, but I processed it. And I feel like I got through that. Now, there are some that I didn't process very well and still linger. You know, the death of Jeffrey Jordan, another soldier that we were friends with.
Yeah.
That was a little more, it was a tragic event that hit me like out of the blue. And I didn't process and still have never really sat down and like cried my eyes out about.
Yeah.
But I don't think you have to. I think everybody processes death in different ways.
True.
And like you said, we all know we're going to die. From the moment you wake up in consciousness, that's the one true fact is you will one day be snuffed out. There is no immortality.
It's so weird though how he was saying it though. It's like you know, but you don't know. It's like a sub. It's weird. It's like
I
something
agree.
that you don't.
It's something that
it's
you know that you don't
so
acknowledge.
It's like oxygen. You know it so fundamentally that you don't even acknowledge its
don't even
presence.
think about it.
Gravity
But
or
that
something.
one day when you're trying to suck in that last breath and
and it's not there,
you're
We
then
gonna
all
talked
of a
realize-
sudden, whoa.
Me and John were having a discussion about the different things in your body that are normally handled subconsciously that you can actually then take over conscious control of, like your breathing and stuff like that. But I made the point that, but then there are other things like your liver producing bile. Like you can't just like,
more bile.
Come on, bile. You know,
Come
like
on,
it doesn't work like that. Or like, you know, come on, liver. Like let's just like process this shit.
Like if you got a kidney stone, you can't just be like, all right, come out of the tip of my dick.
You know, like,
shoot
it's
it
just-
out.
It has its
Can't
own
do it.
thing. And so like I think
So
that
true. Damn.
I mean, yeah, and so there's certain things that you just don't even acknowledge that are happening that are so, like you said, fundamental that if they were not happening, you wouldn't have any experience at all. But because you don't actually like interact with them at all, your brain is so efficient. It's like, well, that information doesn't mean
useless,
anything. Because I'm not going to waste time thinking about it. It's the reason why you can't see your nose. Like your nose is always there. Your eyes can see it, but your brain literally was like, that doesn't matter. You've seen it your whole life.
I was about
Like,
to say, I see my nose.
It's
You
true.
tell me what I
But you
can.
know, like
I
you
mean,
know
you see
so
it,
much.
but
yeah,
that
you-
when's the
I
last
get you.
time you were like, I'm looking
I
at
never
my
think
nose
about it, yeah.
24/7.
I never think about it.
Never
You
thought
see your
about it until you
nose
just said it.
24/7.
Wait,
Never actually thought about it before now.
memory rush. I remember being on a hill doing PT in basic training and doing flutter kicks and on an incline and looking up and just looking up at the blue sky and thinking to myself like, one of us is going to eventually puke and then we can stop. And I wasn't going to puke.
Yeah.
So I'm kicking my legs.
Yeah.
And I look up and I'm blinking at the sky and I start seeing the bacteria in my eye, the little floaty. If you
I've
haven't seen a
seen it, the
floaty,
little-
most people have seen a
the
floaty in their
dotties,
eye.
yeah.
I'm just following them, just blinking. Watching
Is that
them
what that
move.
is?
I don't think that's.
I
what
don't think
that
that's
is.
what that
You can't
is.
see that.
That's not what that is.
Bacteria's
You can't.
single
I mean,
cell.
I will. You cannot.
What
see
are the
that.
floaties in my eye?
I'm pretty sure it's just.
It's like
light.
light.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
just like
no,
the
sir.
light fucking with your eyes.
Oh no, sir! There is something in there.
you
It's a
sure you
little
didn't just
guy.
have a little bug crawling on your eye?
I'm sure I don't have bugs in my eyes. It's called a floaty. Google that shit.
It's
Float?
called a floaty.
Floaters in your eyesight.
Eye floaters. Jelly-like
No,
substances.
no.
Microscopic.
That's not it.
Doesn't say nothing about bacteria, buddy.
No, it says right there, microscopic fibers within the vitreous tend to clump and can cast tiny shadows on your retina. The shadows you see are called floaters.
What does that have anything to do with bacteria?
And that's what I'm saying. It looks like a little strand of like an amoeba or that's what it looks like when you see a floaty. Like if you look at an image of a floaty in your eye.
All I was saying was that you can't see bacteria.
I'm not claiming
no matter how
can.
close it is to your eyes.
And I don't intend to claim that you can see bacteria in your eyes. I'm saying when I was doing these kicks,
it had the shape of what you imagine a bacteria looking like.
And it looks like a cool little single-celled organism, kind of.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, those are.
But was it like this? Was it like the sparkles? Like,
No.
you know, like when you really get to like running really heavy, or you stare at the eyes. Or
I've seen
or
those.
if we squeeze for like our eyes shut for a long time and you open them and you get those little like.
This is different, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
If you go back to.
I'm gonna just put, can you see bacteria on your eyes?
No, just back up to the floaties and go to images, dude. That's all you got to do. Just hit the back button. Go to your images once you have the floaters in your eyes.
Yeah. Floaters in your eyesight.
That's what they look like, the third one.
Wow.
Ta-da.
I'm going to go ahead and say that I've never consciously been aware of seeing any of these in my own eyesight.
You should search for them. They're there.
Search for them.
I'm saying, like, you can see them. It's not abnormal.
Oh, you're just saying that it's the same as, like,
or eye
what I said
flashes
about the
are
nose?
actually inside your eyes. They are line spots or web-like lines that move across your visual field. They generally appear as black or gray smudges that drift as you move your eyes around, almost like they're following your gaze.
Okay, so these are literally like technical terms. Eye floaters and eye flashers. This is fascinating.
Floaters causing shadows on the retina.
Look at it. Look at
Detached vitreous.
You can see it's like floating in your eye.
There's a vitreous gel-like body.
Crazy. The eye, don't even get me started on the
Fascinating.
eye, you know, in general already. Like, what the fuck is even
So
going
the
on
floaters I saw that I was following around as I was doing flutter kicks,
Right.
I knew were always there, but I never focused on them. So it was like this thing. It's like death. It's always there. And I had never once thought about it. And it's like death hitting me out of the blue. I see a floaty in my eye, and I'm like, I can see parts
What is that?
of the fucking material inside of my eye. Like...
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But you still don't have control of that.
No,
though.
you're not.
So you can't just be like,
Go away.
see ya.
Yeah, no, exactly. Once I saw it, I was like, "You're there. I can see you now."
Yeah. But
Like-
then once you stop seeing it, you can't just
Yeah,
be
it's
like,
just
look
you
at
could.
him
Yeah, you
again.
couldn't just be like, "There he is.
I
There he is,
see
right
you.
there. I see you." You'd lose him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so that your brain has that, like you said, it's a total ability to put those things to the out of your sight, out of mind type situation. Like you don't
Keep
think
them in
about
the
it.
subconscious.
It's
And
like
so-
Sadhguru says, if you're hungry, you've only got one problem. If you're not hungry, you've got hundreds of problems. So, like, death isn't a problem because you're not dying right now. But when you are dying, it's your only problem.
It's the
You're like,
biggest
oh my
problem.
God, I got this bullet in my stomach.
It's so a big problem, you know.
It's
That's-
fancy. It's funny you say bullet in your stomach. I went to Reservoir Dogs where he's like, "I'm fucking dying."
I'm
in
fucking
the back
dying.
Seat. I'm fucking dying. Harvey Keitel's like, "You're not gonna fucking die. You're not gonna fucking die." I love that scene, man. That's a fucking crazy Tarantino scene. Sorry, that's my Harvey Keitel and my I don't know the other actor.
It was
Those
good.
were- yeah. I'm fucking dying. You're not gonna fucking die, okay?
He tells him like he's being such a bitch. He's like, you're not going to fucking die.
Yeah, he's using that
Calm
voice.
down.
Yeah, that's so funny.
And it's like, that's a lot of blood. He
Yeah,
looks
he's
like he's
like,
going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
But
movie.
either way, it's always happening. And he said, I think so. We're not afraid of it consciously, but there's obviously a mechanism built into you to preserve life.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? Like you won't just go run in front of a train or do things that you deem could cause you the loss of it.
That's why you have reflexes and stuff.
Yeah, it's all that's built in, you know,
Yeah.
so to just stop you from that. So, you know, it's natural to have that fear, but I think it really comes from the fact that people just haven't processed it or aren't familiar with the process. And so when it does happen to you or happen to somebody around you, it takes you by surprise.
It's so
You know
bad,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like, it's just like this whole thing that just ends up jump scaring you rather than just being like, yeah, I see that coming.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's
It's a
gonna
funny
happen,
thing that you
know?
point that out because, like, surveys have been done many times, and I think it's pretty consistent that the fear of death is the number 2 death when you ask somebody what's the number 1 thing you're afraid of, right behind public speaking. And so, like, but
Interesting.
you have to understand, like,
social fear.
the social, you have to interact
greater.
with society every single day. You have to talk to people in public every single day.
You only gotta die one time.
You only got to die one time.
And
it
you don't
only
gotta
comes
deal with
around
shit.
once. Yeah,
You don't gotta
so
deal with
maybe
nothing.
on a rare occasion, you might have to deal with dying a couple of times in your life.
Yeah.
But you really, like, you're not going to be dead for 10, 15 days and then come back. So once you're dead, you dead.
Done.
And so you don't, it's a problem your brain only has to try to solve once or twice. Whereas the societal issue of, like, how do I make sure that the society that I'm around, the group of people that I interact with, don't ostracize me and leave me helpless out here on the fucking Serengeti, you know, because that's how our brain thinks. We don't think like, oh, I don't need these assholes, because, like, you might consciously say that, but deep down you need these motherfuckers. You need them.
Yeah, you're concerned about your need for them.
Yeah,
sure.
and you are. Like, that's why you do.
Subconscious.
That's why you do embarrassing things in front of people. You're like, please like me.
Yeah.
Please don't shun me. I would really hate that.
Yeah, seriously. But it's very fascinating to find out that that's rated higher than death. But I see why you think that, and that makes sense too.
I mean, that's just my.
What about
how I think about it?
Why.
What about the fear of God? Because, you know, in a lot of cultures, there's not just God. There's a God of death. There's a God of life, a God of the harvest, all these other things. So, like, where do you count, like, religion and the fear of God, do you think, in that category? Do you think
like,
death is the fear of God?
No, I think that's the fear of eternal judgment.
Yeah, that's judgment, I think.
I think that the fear of God, it would be just like the meta of the fear of social judgment. Like, you think about the same way that you would think about your society at large judging you, is like God is just a representation of that. God is the ideal judging you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like, I'm just
I like
talking
that.
about, I'm talking Jordan Peterson here. I'm not making any of this up.
Yeah.
It's all Jordan Peterson.
No,
but
like
yeah. That's, you know, kind of the idea that he talks about. Is like, God is just the ideal, and that's why he judges you, because you're always judging yourself against the ideal, this, like, idea of what you should be, what you could be if you were your best.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the fear of it is. Like, it's like the fear of, like, not fulfilling your potential.
Well, I think it's not. It's the fear of loss, right? It's like, we all don't like to. Like,
You mean death or God?
No, death, right? So
Yeah.
it's not really like you're afraid of the judgment part. It's the afraid that you lose something. So if I told you right now, I'm going to go in your wallet and burn $100 or something, you know, it's like, hey, what do you mean? Like, I don't want to, that's my money. You know, so this is what I'm saying. It's your life. And so people hate that end of the relationship. We'll stay in a toxic relationship for 5 years just to avoid the fear of, you know, losing that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So
Losing your freedom. That's like being locked up is like the fear of death.
Yeah,
like
same
you're
thing,
scared
right?
of getting locked up because you
you're
lose your
afraid of
freedom. That's
losing-
a death of some sort.
They've actually, same as they rated the fear of death, we have your human brain is more likely to avoid loss than it is to go for gain, right? So we are reward and pleasure based animals, but we're far more driven to avoid the pain than we are to seek out the reward. So you know, like, that's a fact in the sense of same thing with loss or death. That's part of my coping thing. I'm saving all that for the end, so I'll keep piling up as we go, but that's part of my coping strategy.
I wanted to bring you guys a couple different gods of death. You know, it's like we have one god, so our god is maybe the god of death because he's our god. Like, he's just the one god, but all these other cultures have always had
like a Haiti or somebody who's specifically in charge of death.
It's
the difference between monotheism, polytheism.
Thank you. I was looking for those terms. Yeah. We are a monotheistic society in the sense that we're a Christian society with one God, and there are, what was the other one?
Polytheism.
Polytheistic cultures where, you know, like Shinigami was the Grim Reaper. I don't know. I missed it. It's a Japanese religion. There it is. Shinigami's the Japanese god of death. I also wanted to show you guys the Egyptian Osiris, and then there's another one too. I think it's a Roman or a Greek. His name is Thanatos. But this idea of all these other cultures didn't just have one judging god, like one master god. They were polytheistic, so you had to have ceremonies for the god of death. You had to think about the god of death. You had shrines. You had all these cultural things where you think about death because he's one of your many gods. In our culture, it's just, you know, you go to church. Do they talk about death a lot? I don't know. I don't go.
I don't know. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to church. I don't remember them talking.
I think this is something that's religious by nature. And you were talking about fear of God, but I do think that religions bring up your death more, but not in a sense of like, you're going to die, but in the sense of like, that'll be the opportunity for you to meet your creator, meet your God, become one with your God. And so that is talked about a lot in a more light situation of like, here's an opportunity for you to cross over into this other place where you get to be one with your God, heaven. Or if you fuck it up, then hell, of course, you don't get that opportunity. So they kind of turn death as like a carrot, like a carrot for you to chase.
Yeah, it's true.
They make a game out of life. But I guess the point is they talk about like these guys especially too, because if you're making sacrifices or praising or worshiping your death God, then you're definitely acknowledging it in that one ideal, I guess. But society, like any religious, in Christianity, I didn't go to a
well, in Christianity, we just have the Grim Reaper in our society. Right. Like that's our death god. Like Christianity doesn't allow you to have multiple gods, so God is just technically God is the god of death.
But that's my point. It's like it's still talked about. It's like that's when you go there.
Well, technically, Michael is the angel of death. So there's like an angel of death. It's a different kind of deity.
Well, I guess that's
It's just a separation. It's like they made the other gods angels to keep the monotheism.
Yeah, to make this one
thing. Yeah. So it's like interesting that you say like the God, he's the god of death because he's the god of everything. But technically, there's like a guy who handles death for God.
True.
Well, in different religions too, because like Catholicism has all of like the saints and things like that, where you have representatives of certain things, but they don't consider that polytheism.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah,
it's all kind of the same shit.
Hindu is full of gods. That one is. I didn't put anything down on that, but
there's too many gods for us to talk about. Hindu.
This is the Japanese Shinigami, but I think the next one's cool too. Osiris. That's the dog-headed god from Egyptian culture. That one's pretty fucking badass.
Osiris? I'm pretty sure Anubis is the headed dog one. And it's funny that Osiris is also the god of death, considering he's like their main god, from what I understand.
I think he was, right? I thought Osiris was like the...
Yeah, and then
Horus
is like God's son, like our Jesus, which is why like the stories are so similar between those two characters. But yeah, when he was telling me that Osiris, because I didn't know that Osiris was a god of multiple things like that. I didn't even know that. I knew that they were polytheistic, but I thought that their like Egyptian polytheism was a little bit different in the sense that they didn't really like identify certain people as being gods of this and gods of that. They were just different deities and figures that they all worship because they were the gods.
Yeah. Yeah, because Osiris was like 5 different things there. It was the god of fertility and death and resurrection and life and vegetation.
A couple of things, yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
some very unrelated things.
Yeah, I noticed that too, right?
Yeah, but Anubis, the god of death.
He's the Hades, the guy who like rules the death.
The underworld.
Anubis, dog-headed god of the dead, thy clawed hands drip blood red, taking souls to the weighing scale, watching closely as some win, some fail. Those that are light to paradise they proceed, but those that are heavy to Amit you feed. The feather of my heart is too light to defy what is in the soul and to justify.
Damn, what the fuck?
So from that day forth your claws were blood red, for every human soul you sever from the mummied dead. Anubis, hear my plea, I beseech thee. My soul is pure and will weigh lightly. Tarnish it not with your claws of red, but place it with care in the place of the heavenly dead. Anubis is perhaps one of the most recognizable gods in the Egyptian pantheon. Often we associate him today with the afterlife and as the god of mummification. The ancient Egyptians first referred to him as Inpu or Anpu, the word Inpu closely relating to imp, meaning decay. It wasn't until the arrival of the ancient Greeks that he began to be known as Anubis. The iconic appearance of the god is what makes him so easy to identify.
Crazy.
He was often depicted as a man with the head of a jackal, and other times he was seen as a regular jackal or dog that would accompany the goddess Isis. In more recent artwork, these two depictions seem to have been somewhat merged together, giving us a more menacing and mysterious-looking god, one that we'd almost expect as a guardian of the underworld. The association between Anubis and the jackal is one that was formed because it was pretty common for Egyptian jackals to lurk around tombs and graves. Perhaps one of the main reasons that tombs became so intricate and elaborate was to keep the bodies of the dead safe from jackals and other animals.
Fascinating.
The host of genetic research that's been done over the years,
it's all about
which
function,
suggests that
baby.
the Egyptian jackal associated with Anubis is in fact not a jackal at all, but rather an ancient wolf. Anubis's fur or skin was depicted as black, and jackals typically have brown fur. The colour black was thought to be a symbol of death, but it was also a symbol of fertility, thought to represent the River Nile's fertile black soil.
It's very interesting that black is the representation of death, it's like the color of death. See, and that's what I was hoping that we'd get into with a little bit of this. I was looking for is like some of the things that they do symbolically, to represent death, and like why these are the gods of death, and what they would do, like, it's funny, I'm sure, I don't know, I want to find it here, but I'm sure they make sacrifices and stuff to the god of death, so they like
he
kill people to.
If you listen to the story or the little poem, I guess, that he read there about Anubis, he was basically describing that Anubis was the judgment, the judgment maker.
Right.
That Anubis was the one that would decide whether or not you would get into, paradise, or you were he was going to take you to the underworld, like his red claw, stuff like that.
Right.
It says right here, too, Osiris was the judge of the dead in the underworld and the agency that granted all life, including sprouting vegetation and the fertile flooding of the Nile River, described as he who is permanently benign and youthful. Wow. Awesome. That's cool. He's also the Lord of Silence.
What's benign mean?
That's funny, though, because I've heard, like, Jordan Peterson talks a lot about the Egyptian... like the Egyptian mythology, and he compares it a lot to like Christianity and whatnot, but he talks about how Osiris, I guess in the way that he describes the story, Osiris was like the father figure, Horus is the son if you're comparing it to the Christianity, and Set is he describes him as being Osiris was
No. Jessica just came in. I wanted you to see if sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mac.
Osiris was basically I remember him saying that he becomes blind to what he should see, and which is the reason why Horus, which is like the eye of Egypt, like the Horus's eye, he has to go to the underworld and defeat Set, and then take his eye and give it to Osiris so that Osiris can have full vision, and all of this weird symbology about Osiris becoming like the old person that fails to see what's right in front of them, and Horus using like the youth and like the hawk vision, which is why Horus has like the head of a bird, like a falcon, because they have the best vision out of any animal, or eagles.
Egyptian seems to be full of these awesome.
Oh yeah, I just think it's very interesting because like obviously that's just the way that Jordan Peterson knows about it, but hearing the Wikipedia thing, like he's saying like this Wikipedia is actually contradicting what that other video was saying, because I was saying that Osiris is the judge of the dead. Yeah. Which maybe he was, and then I know that the anthropomorphizing of animals into gods and into human-like figures happened later in Egyptian culture, so maybe Anubis was like a branch off.
They have it right here. Offspring is Anubis in some accounts, so there seems to be some...
Okay, so yeah, in the same way that Horus is like an off-branch, and then Anubis is also an off-branch. Okay. Man, it's
in
so
some accounts
intricate.
Though, so
in
like,
some accounts, yeah. So it just depends on how you interpret the history.
Yeah, but mythology. I mean, dude, mythology. I mean, this is the same. Like, it's not like theirs is any more intricate than ours, or you know what I mean, like Western civilization.
Well, no, it's just that I know about ours. You know, like, this is new information.
But I mean, you know, like you have Church of Latter-day Saints, but then you have Jehovah's Witnesses, and you also have like you know Christianity, but then you have Pentecostal, and are they all praying to the same God, or they all got different gods? Like, are those all just the same Christian
they
God?
Pray to the same gods. It's just a different interpretation of, well, like that's where the Protestant
what God fucks with and doesn't fuck with.
Exactly, like what you're allowed to do based on who's reading the Bible.
Yeah, and see, that's what's always interesting when you break all these things down into multiple gods or whatever, in a sense. But
we had people approach us about how God has a mother.
Oh yeah, that's right. In that parking lot, the dude was talking about, or not the parking lot, the guy that came to pick up that piece of furniture we were selling.
We researched, I researched their religion a little bit. It was very fascinating.
Yeah, he came back and told me, and I was
wild.
He told me a little bit about it too.
Yeah, like about how this like Asian dude was like saying that he was God, and then the woman said that she was actually the mother of God after that dude died, and like fascinating.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it just got me thinking. I was like, I wonder if that guy knows about that stuff, or if if it's just like a church that he goes to. Because you might not know. Like if you just go to a church and you don't know like what the Latter-day Saints is, but the guy's just giving you practical messages. And then one day you like do some research, you find out like the dude who came up with it thought he was God, and you were like, oh wow, I didn't know that. The pastor didn't say anything about that.
I would also like to just real quick see the Thanatos. This guy, he's pretty cool. So this is the Greek.
Do you think that this is where they got Thanos from?
I'm assuming so. He was the Greek personification of death and was a minor figure in Greek mythology, often referred to but rarely appearing in person.
Huh. Yeah, he had that bit part role.
He had that bit part role in life, god of death. Just a bit part role. It's kind of like Supernatural in season 4, I believe, when you had the god of death. He had a bit part. Yeah.
It's interesting that all these cultures think that something's controlling it, though, and making that decision. Because it almost seems kind of random sometimes, like we were talking about like things you could do to control your death the other day or something. But I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from too. Is you smoke your whole life and live to be 97 years old, whatever, die peacefully in your sleep, and then other person down the road does it all right or whatever, and then gets hit by a bus. So it's like.
It seems so arbitrary.
Yeah, it's like almost like you said, like there's obviously something else in control of it. Like I'm not in control of death. Or
the
whatever,
chaos of the world, the decisions that just happen.
The God or whoever. It's like that's what God is.
God's
the representation of the unknown.
Yeah, you would just there was like a god of wind, and because you were just like, well, there's something's causing this wind, and as far as we know, I mean the gods caused the stars to move, so why not the wind?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Or they are the stars. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the religious aspect when it comes to death is super fascinating because, like you said, I think that it does, in a way, expose more people to death. Like, I don't know. It's like hard to say. Like, I don't want to make a generalized statement, but you'd think that like generally, religious community would be a little bit more accepting of death. Maybe not have a better relationship, but just at least brush up against it more in their thinking than an atheistic community possibly. 100%. Just because atheists just believe that when you die it's just an end of the life processes and that nothing happens, so why even care?
And that's why like all the focus is on now and like
in the living.
And there is no but then that's why I think that, like you said, Jordan Peterson points out, that I would point out, and that anybody that kind of sucks because people think of God only serving that to quell the fear of death. And that's not actually the role of an ideal. Like when you think of like a judging God or something, or like a heaven, and everybody's like, "Oh, I want to go to heaven," or God will, whatever, take me to the promised land or the beautiful place or whatever, and then I can escape the shithole. That's like something to quell the fear, right? Like quell the fear of what if I have an insignificant life, right? Like what if my life ends up being not
God had a plan
that
for
I
you.
Value, right? Well, I was part of God's plan, right? And then also to quell this fear of like, well, death isn't a bad thing; it's a chance for you to meet your Creator, right? So, but that's not like, so it gets this bad rap. It's like, well, I'm not afraid of death, so you're dumb for needing these fairy tales to quell your fear of death. Like it's like people think of it as like a nightlight or something, and that's not what it's for necessarily. It's one process that it serves, but I don't think it's its only use.
I think it's actually a misunderstanding of what the idea of God as an ideal was supposed to be, in the sense that once you achieve the status of the ideal and you are like Jesus, if you will, like you walk with God, meaning that you do the things that God has prescribed, you live like God would have lived, then your life is heaven. Like it happens here. That's the way that I feel like I think about it, which
like heaven on earth.
I think it's a much more effective, like it's a practical thing. Like exactly. Like because I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I mean, like it seems like the afterlife concept might have been put in there. It might have been arrived at later on, in the sense that you had this idea that there was the ideal, and then the ideal actually became a representation of something that you would happen to you afterwards if you lived a good life. Not that if you lived your life properly now, your life would be well here. It would be heaven on earth. If it would be heaven for you, heavenly, if you live properly. And
Well,
the proper way was to live with God.
I think because I got manipulated.
Right, exactly.
Because you start seeing it as this like ultimate carrot.
Yep.
Like I said, if everything's an incentive
It's
carrot,
a goal, yeah.
right? So now I get the ultimate goal of like, you'll never know if you did it right or wrong until the very end. So you have to do it all the way through, right?
Yep.
And so people started manipulating that in the sense of like you said, now you have to do the X's and O's of it, hit these check marks, or do these things that I've prescribed to you all the way through your life. So essentially, you're
I have this book. I
I control you now.
You have to read this book. Live by this book, and then you get a carrot at the end.
At the end.
And at the end of it, it's eternal life.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you read that book and follow its rules, you get the ultimate cheat of death.
It becomes
it's
like
cheating death.
It becomes like a good little carrot stick, and so
which is what the whole Protestant movement was for. The first branch off from the Catholic and Christian church was when Martin Luther made the Protestant Reformation, and his biggest thing was the can't remember what they called them, the penance or something, but you could like buy these
you could buy these things.
Yeah, these like, it was basically like it's like what we think of as confession now. Like you could just go and confess, and then you're good, and then you can sin, and then you just go and confess, and as long as you confess right before you die, you're good. It's basically like that. Like you would just do all this sinny shit, and then the dude would, like the church guy would come around, you buy the money ticket with money you pay the church for this little ticket thing that said you are absolved of all of your sins.
Yes.
And they were just selling these like crazy to everybody. And Martin Luther was like, does anybody else see what's happening here? Like, am I the only guy that notices that this has just become a racket? And he nailed those fucking 93 things up on the church, and they were like, kill this man. This man is a heretic to my wallet.
The story of Martin Luther is very interesting.
It's crazy.
It's a very interesting story. I definitely, not to get off on the topic because we're going to talk about death, but if you want to look into, Martin Luther, that's something I highly advise you look into, especially his writings. He had a bit of an anti-Semitic tilt to his writings in his later life. So, it's something everybody, if you really want to learn about Martin Luther, go deep. There's a lot out there. He's an interesting character in time.
Maybe we'll do an episode on him one day.
And the Protestant Reformation with Martin Luther, that's an interesting topic.
It's a spicy topic.
Could be have we done a full episode on religion? I don't believe we have.
I don't think we have. I mean, I was like, damn, we're really about to turn this one into it here in a minute.
I mean, yeah.
Well, it happens, like we call it the tech episode when we talked about robots and AI.
Yep.
There's so much more that tech is involved with. It's like just one aspect of it. And I think because death and religion are so intertwined, like you said, death is like fundamentally linked with religion. That's its main purpose. That's the whole thing focuses around death and what happens up to death and what happens after death.
Like you said, is ass backwards because it's really about how you're living.
Right.
You know, it's a process for refining your lifestyle and like your living process, not your death process.
Now that could just be our personal development mind interpreting what we see from the Bible in a certain way, in the same way that other people interpret the Bible in different ways. So I mean, like I see personal development everywhere.
That I would argue that are driven by the fear of death. Then that's what they would see religion as the pacifier.
As a pacifier for death. So you use it for different things. Society uses it sometimes to quell people. Individuals use it to pacify fears. To improve their lives, whatever. Find community,
to find purpose.
It's a tool
as well.
It's a tool that we're all using.
Yeah, you find purpose in your God, your path that God has given you.
You can do all kinds of stuff with it. But it has to do in all of those aspects. It has to do with death, and so I don't think that we could have really done like a death episode and not touched on religion, at least in some way. And like he said, like the fact that he brought up polytheism is really interesting aspect of it because they had their own like specific gods of death that had their own rituals and stuff like that. So it was a well-deserved walk through the valley of death.
I love that.
And God is right next to
us. The Via de los Muertes.
Well, I love that it's this is a good segue in the sense of like I do think that like all the things that were described as gods are things that we can't describe, right? And control or understand.
Uncontrollable phenomena.
Right? So, where the crops come from, how babies are made, what happens when you die, all these things are a god.
Why does lightning do that?
Yeah, wind, right? We create gods because we can't understand them. And I've started to believe in my own personal life, the more that you lean into these things that you can't understand, right? They actually help you. It's actually things that we're afraid of, the very things that are the spice of life, if you will. Right? Like we said, all these things that we're not talking about, that's what life is really about. And death is one of those things. way I've learned to cope with it and stuff is really exploring the topic and understanding the topic and really trying to look at it from different points of views and stuff. And I started thinking, how can I be afraid of something that is so fun, like
fundamental?
Yeah. Why would I be afraid of something that billions and billions and billions of people have done before me? Yep. You know what I mean?
Everybody.
And that is so inescapable. So inescapable. It's like being afraid of the sun or the wind or, you know what I mean, any of these things. But I took some solace in seeing also what other people have thought of. You know, people have had near-death experiences and stuff, and they've kind of brushed up with this death, you know, and this, we could say brushed up with the topic, but, you know, scientifically have actually experienced death.
Yeah, like flatline and come back.
Like their bodies stopped. I would love to talk about those, you know, some near deaths, but I would love to get in first to this guy. He talks about kind of defining death and like what it actually is, and like the loss of like your consciousness and stuff compared to like death in the body. And so it's really, he's explaining why you are able to have these types of experiences in the first place.
Yeah, like the energy that's left in your brain.
Right, exactly. Like there is still life in you even after you've lost what you call life.
I was watching a very interesting thing on octopus, and how their nervous system and their brain goes throughout their whole body, including all their tentacles. So it's this idea that when you chop off a piece of an octopus, you're chopping off a piece of its brain network.
Yeah.
Because it extends through all its limbs.
Yeah.
So it was just this incredibly fascinating small, it was like a mini documentary of some sort. But it was very interesting about how their brain, they think with their tentacles. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, this is what it makes sense
because we have tentacles.
People,
I mean, you think with your tentacles.
You see what I'm saying? That's what's so crazy about it.
Because yes, and that's how things regenerate and stuff, and like can become a whole nother organism.
You know, when people die, essentially it's when the heart stops. So this has been going on for, as far as we know, millennia, not longer. And when the heart stops, you stop breathing and your brain shuts down, and that's how we declare people dead. And that's why we give a time of death and we give them a note. And really, to be honest with you, until about 50 years ago, that was the point of death. So people become lifeless, motionless, the brain shuts down. But now through advances in medicine, we can actually bring people back to life even after they've gone beyond that threshold of death, and study what happens to them. And one of the interesting things, of course, is that the brain completely shuts down, as I said. But what's fascinating is that the cells inside the body, and particularly the cells inside the brain, do not suddenly become annihilated. They go through a process of decay that can take a few hours, which is why we can actually medically bring people back to life after they have technically gone beyond that threshold of death for tens of minutes, if not hours of time afterwards. And that, of course, raises many interesting questions about what happens when we die.
So tell me more about this study. How did you conduct?
Is he saying that they're just doing this to people?
No. So the way it works, I was thinking about that too. The way it works is I'm sure you have to get like permission from somebody, but they take the opportunity, like if you get into a life-threatening situation and they are able to resuscitate you, they probably ask like your family members or somebody, or if you're coherent enough to like give consent, but like we'd love to study what's going on with your brain right now because it gives us good information. But not every hospital can do that, you know, like it's like certain places that have the equipment and stuff like that. So it's I don't know, it might be wrapped up in your state's organ donor thing. It's very complicated.
I feel like he's saying they did a study and that they can put people down and bring them back.
No.
Okay.
He did a study where people were going down and they studied what happened to you.
And they study what happens to you when you die, yeah.
Because he said we just found out that, you know, there's a decaying process that happens after you died for hours. Some people come back during those hours, and he said that's why we can, because there's still the light, like your cells are still alive.
Tap into that.
But like once your cell dies and breaks apart, there's no coming. What are you gonna come back to? You know,
yeah, no. My question was: are they knowingly putting people? No, okay.
No, they're not killing people.
No, I'm not saying they're.
No.
Well, they would. Yeah.
And
well, they'd have to be killing people. For
what you're saying.
They're also not secretly
going
going in and hooking you up to machines
when you arrive at an emergency room and you're dying or dead, and they bring you back to life, there's some way that they can get consent to use that information that they can collect post death and post resurrection in a study.
Okay.
And they're definitely
fascinating.
not doing it as you roll up in the ER.
Okay, yeah,
it's
so
like
this is
people
like-
who've got cancer and all this stuff, and they're slowly approaching death, and they're like, "Hey, can we monitor you after you die? See what happens to your body." And you're like, "Yeah, sure." For signs, like you said, there's somebody walking around John Hopkins, and they come,
How are you gonna?
"Hey, Mr. Allen, how you doing today? Hey, I'm from the office of studying people after they die. We just want to talk to you about would you be open to being studied after you die?"
And tell me about
And you're
how
like,
you came.
"Well, how much I get?" "Well, Mr. Allen, you'll be dead, so you're not gonna get anything. That's not really a compensation."
But no, I don't think that they bring people like if you
Reaching
die
your
of
findings, your
cancer,
conclusion.
I don't know if they can like resuscitate you back to life right then and there.
He's not saying that the fact of being able to be resuscitated and the information that they gained from the study did not happen at the same time.
No, I know.
They're just saying like since the dawn of time we've been able to resuscitate people back for maybe an hour or so.
Yeah.
And he's saying studies lately have shown why. And that's because they studied what happens to people an hour after they die.
So I'm an intensive care doctor, so my job is to essentially save people's lives and prevent them from dying. But unfortunately, people do die, and we try to revive them. What we have found is that over the last few decades, many millions of people have now come back, and many of them have reported, actually, anecdotally, that they've been able to see and hear things going on, even though from our perspective, they should have been dead and their brain should not be functioning at all. And so we became intrigued to study this, one, because it was fascinating, and two, because we try to revive people without brain damage and to ensure they don't have any disorders of consciousness, so not becoming like brain damaged or having a vegetative state. At any rate, so this particular study is the largest study ever carried out in the world. It was done in 15 medical centers across the US and in Europe. And we studied more than 2,000 people who'd gone through this cardiac arrest or process of death. And we did not expect people to have any consciousness or awareness, but intriguingly, up to 40% of people came back and had a perception of being aware of what was happening to them, even though they had technically gone beyond the threshold of death.
Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a lot to it. I should also add that among that group, 10% had a very deep, profound, mystical.
Science, bitch, but
Why do you think life is this way, Doctor? Why is the sky blue? Well, there's a lot to it.
there's a lot going on.
I'll tell you. Essentially,
The light from your eyes is
all I did
reflecting
was this one study. I don't really know why God does what he does, but here's
experience
my
that was very true to them.
best interpretation
But
of it.
interestingly, 2% actually had full awareness, could describe all the events that were going on among that group. Well, there's a lot to it. I should also add that among.
This is the best precursor of well, without making myself look like a dumbass, okay?
How do I tell this woman that there's no answer?
There's a lot to it. I should also add that among that group, 10% had a very deep, profound, mystical experience that was very true to them. But interestingly, 2% actually had full awareness, could describe all the events that were going on that were validated. So of course the question is, why does that happen? And we don't have the answers, because to our scientific model, when people have died, there should be no more conscious awareness going on. But it sounds like maybe consciousness is able to continue. And by that, I don't mean that they're awake, but that entity that makes us who we are, makes Sam who he is, makes Rena who she is, the self, the mind, seems to continue and doesn't become annihilated after a person has gone through their process of death.
Were there any of the people that you studied that completely lost all consciousness?
Well, that's what I was trying to explain.
Yeah.
Everybody loses consciousness immediately as soon as the heart stops. It's not like they're awake and watching us.
Well, you mentioned that there were some people who remembered there was some sort of mystical experience that they were going through. Were there some people who said, nope, didn't feel anything, didn't?
So some people don't have any recollections. What we don't know is whether they had experiences and forgot it afterwards, and that may be what's happening. Because of course we forget a lot of things, and most of the people who are brought back have issues to do with their treatments. We give them sedative drugs, which wipes out their memories. So
How do you know? How do you know if they
It's
didn't?
like when you study dreams and the guy wakes up and he's like, I didn't have a dream.
Yeah.
He's like, well,
Did he really not have a dream?
He's like,
Just
well,
not remember the dream.
Exactly.
Because that's important information to your study.
Yeah. If you want to prove the point that everybody dreams, you'd be like, oh, you had him, you just didn't remember him. So it's
Well,
like
either
an
way, I think
explanation that has no real fact. Like that's.
Yeah.
It's
Well, he
just
said
your
we
day.
don't know. We don't
know.
know
Yeah.
if it's like strictly you just didn't have any or you just don't. Because that's true. It happens like that. But I want to get to near death because listening to some of these people talk about it, it does not sound like something you need to be afraid of at all. This sounds awesome, honestly. If I'm being honest, every account, I have yet to hear somebody on one of these near death experiences be like, brother. Let me tell you, it's a nightmare. You know,
it was horrible. The
help,
demons were
stop
pulling
it.
me apart.
We got to learn how to stop this death thing. It's you know,
the worst experience.
Like there's nobody like that. But
were any of these people murdered though?
I don't think so.
Because like maybe
I don't know
like
how
if
you
your
have a
emotional
near-death
state.
experience if you're murdered, because you were.
Yeah, you get shot and they take you to the hospital. You're
They
dead when
resuscitate
you arrive,
you.
and they resuscitate
Yeah.
you. And they'd be like, "What happened when you got shot?" You'd be like, "Oh, it was terrible. I was so afraid." You know, like I think if your emotional state, like, you know what I mean? I feel like your emotional state would come into play and what you experienced when you died. The same way like it does.
What
like
if you're drowning? What if you're drowning and they bring you back and you're probably not just like, I saw God and he was beautiful. You're probably just like, oh my God, I was fucking drowning.
See, I think you do though, because like, okay, see, so a lot of people talk about how it's hard because you're under a lot of drugs and stuff, you know, so you have a lot of situations going on. You're under heavy sedatives.
Yeah.
And it's like trying to remember a dream. It's literally like you're unconscious. So it's not like it's literally exactly like, you've had dreams before. Mm-hmm. You cannot say what they were about or what happened in those dreams, but you know you were there and you can remember. You're like, I had this dream last night, you know, and it's like this was what happened. You know, I was running. No, I was chasing something. Something was chasing me. I don't know. I can't really remember where I was at. So, anyways, this is essentially what they're under all these drugs and stuff. Yeah, right, and all that. So, they can feel that kind of grogginess and stuff. They'll talk about that. But once you lose consciousness, it's not like you're still experiencing. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
like, have you ever been choked
you
out?
aren't, but you are kind of. It's like what he was basically.
But have you ever
saying.
been choked out?
Yeah, we used to do it for fun.
We used to do it for fun. And I had to do it in combatives training when I was like learning combatives in the army. And you have to be choked out to black, and it's the scariest thing. You're like, oh, I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like,
I've never been choked out.
Yeah, you do it, and you're just like, and then like right there, right before you're about to go, you're like,
it's so true. I remember a group of friends, like somebody like you would pass out, like do a breathing thing, like, and they'd all wake you up and be like picking you up. Hey, just welcome back, buddy. Yeah. And they would all be like a fucking party of people. Everybody's like tripping on ecstasy, and they just wake you up out of a fucking blackout, that like self-induced blackout.
How was it? But you weren't like.
No, you wake up and you're just like blown away. It's like you're waking up from a dream. It's like you're waking up from a dream.
Yeah, literally. I remember waking up and I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
I was getting choked out.
I was in combatives.
Reality?
Oh, yeah. How long was I out? It could have been years. You have no idea. Yeah. You have no idea. That's the first thing. And then everybody comes back and we're like, what? How long? It's like about 7 seconds.
Yeah, you were out for like a second or not.
We slapped you on the face a couple times and you're like, huh? What? You know?
As soon as that little bit of blood oxygen got into your fucking
back,
brain,
you realize,
huh? What?
So, I mean, that's literally the experience.
Is that what this study is about?
But I think that, okay, because I know that, like.
Are they just joking?
Or not that I know, but I think.
What happened to you? What'd you feel?
Wake up. Hey, wake up. Hey. We had 17 older brothers.
Hey, we got the bullet out of you.
What
did it feel like? Did you hear anything?
That's really funny.
No, because I think that, like, I think what that guy was saying, that's just like, you're. Based on the definition that medically conscious being like awake, no, but being like aware or like having some input coming in, I think kind of ties in with this idea. The way that I kind of feel like the whole body works and the whole universe works really is like your consciousness is like a level up of like your cell's consciousness. Like each cell is an individual thing.
That adds up to your mind.
So like in the same way that an octopus's mind is throughout its whole body, yours is too. Because like it's been proven that when you touch like a hot stove or something and you burn yourself, you remove your hand before the signal actually reaches your brain. In the same way that you get shot before you hear the rifle like explode, you feel the bullet hit you first. Because, well, really, it sounds like it happens at the same time, but the bullet hits you before you hear the sound because it's faster.
Yeah, facts.
And so it's the same way. Like, I think that as like he said, your brain shuts down, like your mega consciousness stuff, the thing that keeps you like awake and operating and making decisions, that goes away. But because there's still some of your cells that are alive, they're still receiving inputs and they're still doing things, functioning. So, because like it's basically saying like you have memory of some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like you come back and you're like, there was some shit going on.
Yeah.
I remember that. Like, you can't really tell what it was, but you're like, there was some shit going on.
He said 40% of people were still like experiencing things after they were dead.
I'm interested.
So I mean,
in
not
that
only do you
2%.
get to die, you get to be there for it. You know what I mean? Like, you get to
watch yourself get killed
dying. Now you're really afraid. Like, if you weren't afraid before, you'd be like, I got to be alive for my death. What do you mean?
That 2%, that could validate things that were happening while they were dead.
Not enough sedative. You know what I mean? Like, they're like,
no, it could
dead.
be.
It's not even.
What about
it's
those
not
people
even
that have
sedative.
that?
You're dead. You're literally,
there's-
your heart's not even beating.
There's people that have that condition where they can like remember every single detail of their lives.
True.
Or whatever. Like their hippocampus is like too
That's
active.
very
I don't know
true.
what it is, but like I just know
Because
that
some
there's,
people
like, a very
lucid
small
dream like a
people.
boss too, so like
Just
they remember their
everything.
dreams and
They
they
can
can
wake up and
control
just
it.
write it
Like
down.
I've controlled myself in a dream before, where I was just I wasn't normal. It felt like my legs each had 20-pound sandbags on them, but I was like walking,
Yeah.
fucking doing shit.
looking
Great,
around and
great
shit.
movie scene idea too.
Oh, great!
Yeah, that's a good one.
Great.
Like sleep legs,
Where's Madison? Guys?
Sleep legs.
scream her name.
Just
News
saying, marching
team.
down the hallway. Just oh man. But anyways, so some people are like that, and maybe have more awareness, you
Yes.
know, and can really ride that experience. But let's listen to what the experience is like from their point of view. I've never had one. Anybody? No.
I have not had a near-death
No.
experience. I have had a moment where I thought to myself immediately afterwards, did I just die and this is a dream, or did I just go around this tail rotor blade and somehow not get hit by it? Like it was a fully spun up Apache, and I went
I'm
around the
starting to
back.
notice you have a lot of blankouts. Where you just do things in your life, but you don't really know if you did them.
Well, memory is a
My
son of
head
a
get
son of a
chopped off
gun.
by that rotor blade?
Yeah, memory is a son of a gun. I remember just going around the back of that
Well,
Apache
more
and
than
thinking to myself, wait a second.
Did I?
Wait a second.
Memory is not a recollection of the events. It's
Well, I mean, there's a-
interpretation of what you
What
thought happened.
Yes.
happened.
And the easiest
90% of
explanation
people
is I
believe
just
there
went around
is
and
an
didn't get hit.
afterlife.
That's the easiest explanation, right? Is that I just went around, didn't get hit by the tail rotor blade.
Well,
I
and
subconsciously
the fact
just went
that
around.
Your head
it.
is in one piece right
Exactly,
now. It's
right?
also pretty good.
But you said,
indication
have you
that
ever
you're
had a near-death experiences? So it was like immediately afterwards, I remember thinking,
Oh,
wait a second.
I get what you're saying, because I've been like, not that you've been near death, because I've been near death.
yes.
Like there's been times where, like, I distinctly remember listening to a bullet whistle past my head, and that's a different experience.
yes, it
Right?
is. And
That's
I'm
a
not,
whole different
and I understand
experience.
that this one is you die and you come back.
Right.
But
But
I
that
would-
experience can
you had, like,
can
a-
wake you up just as much.
You had like a near-death Eve experience.
I had a,
right? Like,
or a
it's like-
brush.
Like it was like that
A
little
brush
moment
with
that was like
Yes.
A
the
brush with death.
precursor.
Yes, I had a brush with death
brush.
where I don't remember going around. I remember just going quickly around
Yeah.
in
But
my
you
brain.
might have missed it by 6 inches.
Who knows? It could have been any
Could have
amount
been
of
feet, but you just
who knows.
Close.
And all I remember is afterwards thinking to myself, "Holy shit! Did I just cheat death?
Did I
Was that a
almost just
was
die?
that a brush?
did I like
Final
walk through
destination
as
shit.
the blade was.
You know, it was,
lifted?
yeah, exactly.
You
Who
definitely did
knows?
not.
I
The
definitely
tail
did
rotor
not. It was
blade is
spun.
like
It was
like
going.
20,000 RPM.
Yeah, it was going. But yeah, anyways. So yeah, that
Yeah, no,
wasn't a
but
near-death experience in the
I
sense
think
of
that
going down and coming
I'll
back.
tell you, spoiler alert, all right? They come out with gratitude. And I think that, like, that's what brush of death will do to you, too. Because it's like you said, you're just bopping along, and you're just like, death will never get me, man. Life is just fucking on. Oh, shit, that's right. It could get me at any second, any day.
Yep.
It's here for me, you know? And
I'm not special.
Yeah.
Death
and
can
then
just snuff me
when
the
you
fuck
come
out.
to that
Osiris?
awareness- yeah. He just rubbed your shoulders
Nope.
like, next time, buddy, I'm
Yep.
going to come get
Hit you with the
And
death
so
finger,
wait,
just
yeah,
touch
yeah,
it
yeah.
once like E.T.
Yeah, he's like, I'm here for you.
Hit you with that demon mock.
But nonetheless, it can really open your eyes, and that's what I was saying earlier. And I'll get on that. Is it can be a blessing, you know, once your eyes are open to that, it can actually be a blessing.
According to our Today.com poll. But what exactly is it? Some people claim they know because they've actually experienced it. They share incredible stories like reconnecting with deceased loved ones or learning the meaning of life. The accounts are vivid and dramatic, but are they imaginary? Are they a true glimpse into life after death?
She fucked up on the teleprompter.
Yeah, she really did. We need to get her in
It's
training.
transformational. It's awesome.
It's transformational.
Pure love, pure joy, pure bliss.
Peace, ecstasy, harmony. There was no fear, there's no hierarchy.
It was just so wonderful.
AA.
It was
Don't you want to
amazing.
die?
Yeah.
The accounts are remarkable and widespread.
I knew
Right? It's like they're almost encouraging you to
it's
get
like
instantly I was in the presence of my creator.
It changed
Enjoy
me
the
as a
ecstasy.
person. This life is not all there is.
From the young to the
I'm
old,
sorry, but-
transcending language, culture, and geography.
It was really life-changing to have that near-death experience.
It redefined Barbara Bartolome's journey at the age of 31. You went into the hospital, you were having a surgical procedure. What happened?
I was having a myelogram, which is injecting iodine dye into the base of my neck.
The dye accidentally went into her brain, she says, and within moments, consciousness was gone and she was flatlining.
I literally went from inside my body, and when I shut my eyes, I was then just the next second I was up on the ceiling looking down at the entire room.
The feeling like nothing she'd ever known.
There was this feeling of a presence that was next to me. It felt like it was God. It felt so loving and so accepting and so eternal. I literally looked down and said, if I'm up here and my body's down there, then I think I must have just died.
So you just felt a presence, an aura, but you didn't see anything.
I didn't look. I was just watching everything happening below me.
But she wasn't ready to die yet, Barbara recalls.
I just began calmly talking to it and saying how much I wanted to go back into my life because my baby daughter was only 5 months old at the time and my son was 8 years old.
Pledging to make changes in her life, Barbara says she was suddenly back.
I shut my eyes up on the ceiling and reopened them, and I was looking right into the orthopedic surgeon's face.
It was striking. From that moment on, she was filled with love, peace, and purpose.
The loss of fear of death is so amazing.
It really doesn't matter if we prove this phenomena exists or not. What is central is what the patient in front of us is experiencing.
Lauren Belge is a critical care physician and author of Near Death in the ICU.
We know that they're clinically dead, and then whenever they are revived, they will actually explain to us what they saw in sometimes exquisite detail about the process of resuscitation.
She estimates seeing at least 50 patients firsthand who recounted a near-death experience.
They may have encounters with loved ones that have gone before them or spiritual beings that actually fit their belief system, and an extreme reluctance to come back to their physical facility after experiencing a sense of intense love and peace.
For many years, Barbara Bartolome didn't openly discuss her near-death experience until she began seeking out others. She became involved with the International Association for Near-Death Studies, a large organization dedicated to research, support, and education. More than 15 million Americans may have had a near-death experience, the group estimates.
This organization helps experiencers with acclimating to their near-death experience.
Is it a gift?
It is a gift.
Barbara now runs her local chapter.
I realized that talking about my near-death experience is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's the peace that I'm supposed to give. It's the gift.
For somebody who is possibly facing death right now, what do you want them to know?
That they don't need to fear it.
In completing her purpose, she's also spreading love, hope, and understanding.
Doing your best to be a good person, I think, through your life here is all that you're really being asked to do.
Now, there are many skeptics who believe these accounts are imaginary or a hallucination or simply made up. Barbara and those in the near-death community just dismiss the skeptics. They say it is their truth and they know that it's real. So you may be wondering what the science says about it all. Is there a way to prove it? Well, in fact, there may be. Doctors and scientists.
Yeah, she says. Tune in next week.
Tune in next week.
We can actually do something about it.
We're going to prove.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
What science have to say about all this
is like
mystical bullshit. We'll find out on the next episode. But you said it during the thing, and you're right? It's like, sounds like hallucination. That's exactly what I thought. I said, wow, this sounds exactly like a DMT trip.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like the whole...
I thought that...
The loving beings, the ancestors.
All this, the ancestral, the seeing a god of some sort. Yeah. And I've heard all different types of gods.
Your connection with the universe.
That, the third person perspective where you're just looking down.
Watching yourself.
So it seemed like a near... I don't know. I mean, I never experienced either one. I've never DMT tripped or had a near-death experience. But listening to people talk about both of them sounds exactly the same. And I would... concur that it's possible that death is the experience of it. There's probably this huge release of DMT, kind of like you said, it's all stored up in your brain. It's probably like that release that says, hey, like this person's ready to like reabsorb. You know, it's like the activation chemical to be like,
it's just a process.
Like you said, the shutdown button of.
I was gonna say it's the
DMT through it. You're just like yes.
Yep, it 100% I think is that it is your body saying like, all right. Pull the lever.
Shut it down, yeah.
And they go, boom. And when that lever shuts, there is a mechanism that is triggered where everybody just goes, oh, shit, DMT.
Imagine if, like,
5 o'clock, boys. Let's hit the...
Imagine
we come rolling out the
turn off your computer, it's just like,
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And that's why they say rest in peace. Like, everything's like, you're done working.
It's peace.
All the cells, your little heart's been chugging along for like a million some beats. And it's finally like, all right, you're off work, buddy. And it's like, yes. Fuck yeah.
Hit me with that wave of DMT, baby.
They go home and like, yes, we're done.
We're done.
But, I mean, look, dude, either way, hallucination or not, why do these people got, what, you know what I mean? What do you have to make up? And then even if you're going to make it up.
She said that the doctors were telling them, like, they don't have a lot of time to make it up if they're telling them, like, they bring them back to life and then they're like, oh my God, you should have seen it, doc.
Yeah. Don't you still think there'd be that one contrarian guy who'd make up like a hell and brimstone story? He'd be like I said, I don't.
It was terrible.
It was a nightmare.
Some sort of like prankster guy.
Yeah. But I looked through them. I did notice that a lot of these people tend to be females. I didn't do no study or nothing, but I'm looking at the thumbnails. I'm looking at all the people they used as examples, and most of them tend to be women.
Could be like the correlation, causation, you know.
A Kansas City woman never thought she would be diagnosed with COVID-19. Well, she was wrong.
She talked about her near-death experience with 41 Action News anchor Cynthia Newsom, hoping her life lessons will change hearts and save lives.
I am a COVID-19 survivor.
A video testimony to her church declaring victory. After a war Angela Griswold never thought she would have to fight.
I just never thought that it would happen to me because I thought I was taking all the precautions. But it did.
Angela told me she let her guard down at a family gathering in a hotel celebrating her niece's graduation.
We were inside of the hotel. Inside the room itself, we were not wearing a mask. Just thinking it was just a family. So we thought we were safe.
The coronavirus quietly crept in, attacking Angela and other family members.
My sister contracted
the way
it.
They work it.
And my niece
let her guard down.
Got it. My two great nieces who are like 4 and 5 now. They got it, but of course they got it.
She never thought she'd get it. She was wrong.
Got over it real quick, which was thankful.
Angela's recovery was painful and slow. She was rushed to the hospital in early August and placed on a ventilator for almost 2 weeks. In her video testimony, Angela explained that while she was sedated on the ventilator, she had a vision that she was in heaven with her sister Tina.
I was able to see my sister who passed away 16 years ago, and she told me it was not my time.
Angela's oxygen levels improved and the ventilator was removed, but her troubles were not over.
I first got out the ventilator, Cynthia, I felt like an invalid. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't feed myself.
She had speech therapy and intense rehab. She advanced from using a walker and now uses a cane.
What would be your take it from me advice?
Thank you.
Stay home. Don't. There are things that you have to get out and do.
I know.
It's very minimal. If you don't have to get out,
the K-12
It's
41 version.
Stay home.
Yeah, that was.
That's your local
Advice.
network.
We got Oprah at home.
Discount Oprah.
Yeah, we got Oprah
Stay
at home.
home.
That's your home Oprah.
That's your Oprah. You got at home.
That is Kroger brand Oprah right there.
That's funny.
Great value Oprah.
God damn.
Nice Oprah. Yeah.
He said nice. This is RC Oprah.
Yeah, this is definitely diet Oprah. This caffeine-free Oprah, not a fan. I want that full sugar Oprah.
Okay, well, hers wasn't all that enlightening, but I just wanted to see whether, I thought it was going to be some updated information. Make sure death is still on the same page as it was a couple years ago.
We saw some cool information with that spin, though. That kind of showed us something. You know how they're just like, it crept in.
Put your guard
she
down
was wrong.
one time.
Put your guard down. Yeah.
And then it crept in. You were wrong.
Exactly.
What happened? Almost died.
It's hard to say though, because it's like, just to devil's advocate. I really haven't stayed home at all. I also haven't tested myself, so I have no idea whether I have COVID.
I mean, the god of COVID is going to decide. It's not, like you said, some people take all the precautions. COVID god come do and tap you with it anyway. So
yep, you go to Iraq and you walk bunker to bunker all day, every day. You make sure.
Tell them the
I'm
truth, bro.
I'm gonna be so safe.
I'll be safe.
And then one day, boom,
Mortar
it'll fucking
smack you
melt
right in
you
the
in
mouth.
your. It'll melt you in your sleep.
Didn't matter.
But the guy that takes no precautions and runs around naked in his underpants
Another day.
does a whole fucking 15-month tour and never gets
And
scratched.
he walks right
Not a single
through.
scratch.
Not a scratch on him.
Yep. Comes back
Not
in
a
better health.
stain on me.
Just
That's one of the other
improved
things. Yeah.
physically, mentally, in every aspect. Just improved. Yeah. Like so.
That's probably one of the other things is like it's just so random
Yeah.
that's what else. It's like, oh, what if I do it all right and then like you said I get hit by a bus? It's like so random that you're like that's another part of the fear. It's like
the cancer god is gonna pick who it takes.
Sketch.
My fear of death, though, I have one. I mean, I guess, like I said, we all have one. Is I'm gonna have a stroke. I feel like I just always worry about that. Not always worry about that, but I worry about it more than I should. You know what I'm saying? It's like whatever.
About having a stroke?
Stroke. You know, it's a very leading cause of death in men. You know, it's just like I've had somebody have a stroke in my family. You know, and I don't even know if it's genetic or anything necessarily, but. You see what I'm saying? I don't know. Why that? It's like doomsday preppers. It's like, why that doomsday? Like, there's a million doomsdays that can happen. Why that one in particular is the one that you guard yourself against? So for me, it's like strokes. But I mean, in the end, that's the same thing. It's like the what if it's all over one day, or like what's it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what this whole episode's about: the fear of death.
And I think about it. I think about it often. It's an exercise for me. Because, like you said, I've come to understand these ideas as having some godlike quality to them. You know, I don't know what, but it's nature.
Some answer.
It's it's like I said, they're fundamental. It's a part of the process, and the more I understand that and can just live in harmony with it, you know, that's why I think it causes a lot of people pain, that fear of death, because you're out of harmony with nature. You're fighting against, and that gives you a lot of insecurity and anxiety and worry because you're worried about essentially what it means to be a human being. You know?
Yeah, which
is
is
to know that you'll die one day.
Yeah, to know that you'll die one day.
You can't have the life if you don't have the death aspect of it on the back end.
Yeah.
So,
because what would anything in your life mean if your life was gonna go on forever?
Dude,
like,
you
there's
would get
absolutely
bored.
nothing.
You would get incredibly bored.
Not only would you get bored, but like you wouldn't get bored because there would be a lack of things to do. You'd get bored because everything that you could do would lose its meaning because now you can literally do everything.
You do it
there's
anytime.
no point of like you. There's not like, oh, I never got to. No, you got it.
You
Go
did.
do it.
Do it.
My question
And you
then,
just sit around forever because you're just like.
Then why do people go to these such extreme lengths to prolong their life? I mean, people fight tooth and nail. They slaughter. In the case of the one lady's name I got written down, I did a little preemptive research on her. They said she killed 650 girls, not all nobles, but a lot of them like noble women and like other stuff too, and bathed in their blood like children to regain her youth in an effort to prolong her life. And it was like, this is the 1600s. So like that's not, I mean, it's a couple hundred years ago.
I will guarantee you that person was driven by fear.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying?
You know what I mean, like they were not, like they were obviously so you know what I mean? It wasn't for a love of life, I'll tell you that much. Obviously, because you killed 600 babies.
Yeah, you can't say that you love life.
Life, if you're just killing everybody's life. Like,
that's antithetical.
Oh, well, then you love your life is what you mean. Fuck everybody else.
Well, it's the quest for immortality.
But like,
I like the way that guy.
It's that run away from fear, man.
And Sadhguru talks about it. He's like, it's not your life, it's life. We all have a little slice of life.
Your cells.
Yeah, you got a little bit of life.
If anything, it's your cells.
The dog's got some life. Everybody's got its own life. He's like, but it's not your life.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like, that's why I would make the argument that you can't say that you love life.
That's true.
You're like, I love life. You're like, no, you don't, bitch.
Murderer. That's why I would say that, yeah, I've kind of come in harmony with it. But you for the people who haven't, I mean, I get the prolonging of it.
Well, prolonging it is
like staying
the natural
with it.
state of what you want to do.
Right.
Because,
You said
because it's finite, and because you know that there's so much that you want to do that you most likely will not get the chance to, you want to prolong the life because the longer you can stay around, the more experiences you can have. Yeah. And I mean, there's a small amount of people that are saying that, there's still some experiences afterwards, but that's really just right on the threshold. Like, it's not like anybody's come back from being like 150 years dead, being like, bro, it keeps being like that. It's a DMT trip forever. Like, nobody says that. It's only
that chick
dying.
did say that her sister came back who died 16 years ago.
No. She said that she got to see her because she was dead.
True.
Not
her memory
that she
of
came
her.
back.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So it's like,
she also said that
they're not really describing what's the experience of death. They're experiencing dying.
Yeah.
And so they're telling you what the experience of dying was like. But then there's living, and then there's dying, and then there's death.
Yeah.
So like, you can't tell me like nobody's been dead before and then they've been
like
dying.
after the lubrication of the like slide you through to the other side happens.
Like it's all the way done.
Yeah,
like once you've
like
been done and dusted, your bones are dust.
Yeah.
Then what's it like?
Yeah.
Hard to say because nobody's had that experience and then talked about it later.
Yeah.
So that's why you want to prolong it because you're like, even if you can like have that little bit of experience afterwards, unless you believe that there's like another world in heaven that you're just gonna like live out this eternal life in heaven or something like that, then of course you want to. I mean, and even then, even like really devout Christians who are like super believers in like the actual like that everything in the Bible is like a physical reality, not just like a metaphysical like story. They they want to live a long time. It's not like they want to die soon so they can get to heaven. Like they
but you have the same thing.
You take what you get now.
I've become at peace with it, but
it's not like you're gonna go kill yourself.
Do that shit later. Yeah,
like it's gonna come when it comes.
When it comes, but I am not in a hurry. I'm big chilling right here.
You've got martyrdom and jihadi in the culture.
But that's because they like give you extreme incentive.
They say that your afterlife is eternal. You have eternal life. Yeah, that's the same thing. Eternal life. It's like the same.
Oh,
reason.
That's true too, though.
It's like a version of it's like a bonus heaven. They like in Muslim.
Well, not even just jihad, but that's everybody. Like heaven is eternal, everlasting life or whatever, eternal life and stuff.
Believe
that's
in
a good
God
argument,
gives you.
Christians. If you want to convert Muslims, just tell them that they don't have to blow anybody up to get a bunch of virgins.
Yeah,
You just get it all in heaven anyway.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, all you have to do is not blow people up, and you'll get your virgins.
Yeah, but now in our religion, in Christianity, if you blow people up,
the jihadis are. Like
the Christians aren't though. The Christians didn't say anything about that. You get praise of heaven. You get to praise God. That was always the thing.
That's what got me too. I got into adult church when they got rid of my church.
Were like, you get to praise God forever.
You just be able to praise at the feet of the Lord. And I was like, well, that sounds boring as hell. I have to do it once a week right now, and it's the worst.
I gotta do this forever for eternity.
Sunday mornings ripped off for this praise of God. You're telling me I gotta do it forever?
For anybody not religious out there, imagine I was just like every day of the rest of your eternity is gonna be Monday morning. Would you enjoy that? It's like, no, that sounds miserable. Like you said, I never enjoyed like Sunday sitting in church worshiping the Lord or whatever.
You know what would suck me in?
Wait to go play a video game.
It would suck me in if they were like, heaven is everlasting life, right? But you're in control. Then I'd be like, oh shit, I'm in control.
I can do whatever I want.
I can make Manchester United play every day. Wait a second.
Like you get.
What are these 72?
You get to be the God.
Yeah, like
you get to enter God mode where you just like.
Yeah.
I mean, running the stages. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, some people. I
mean, that's kind of what happened to you here. You just ended up in a sack of meat. It's not everlasting, but it's a pretty long time.
It's God mode.
And then all of a sudden you're like in control of everything in here. Like
I could build my own mech suit.
There's a lot of life in this body, and you're like the guy who decides what happens to it all. You know
I've always said that I hate the statement when people are like, well, life is short. I'm like, no, it isn't. Literally, for every single person, life is the longest thing you'll ever
experience.
do. Other than death, life is the longest thing you'll ever do. So it's like
it takes
it's
a
not
lot
long.
of time.
Even
Life
if you're
takes a lot of time.
A lot of time. Even if you're only alive for 5 days, that's a long time for you because you got no, you know what I mean? Like that's your whole life.
You know what always proves this to me is the fly only lives for 24 hours.
The cycle.
And that shit always fucked me up. I say, well, what's that like? Like, is he in a hurry? Is the fly like, oh shit, it's fucking 24 hours, gotta fucking bop? And then I'm like, sometimes I'll see a fly and I'm like, poor fly, man, lived his whole life in that trash can.
Had no idea.
There's a whole big ass world this whole day. You could at least spend a couple hours in the grass over there, but you spent your whole. But I could say that for humans. I'd be like, look at somebody else, but he spent 60 years just sitting in that factory.
Yep.
Oh,
man. It's all perspective.
He never knew that there was a whole big old park out here just sat in the trash can.
But he never knew that they would pay for his painting.
But it's perspective. That's what he's saying.
If you live to 500 years, then it's like, oh, he spent 60 years in a factory. What do you do for the other 440?
Yeah.
I think of life in cycles. You said the fly. That fly's 24-hour cycle. That's life.
That's life.
That's a different. That's a whole ass life. That's a life. And then you keep
he
taking
dies
it up.
old. He's like 24 hours.
Old fly.
Take
if you survive the whole 24 hours, like, God damn, look at that old motherfucker.
Now think of
you don't know what I've seen today.
Think of the life of a star or a planet or a galaxy. And you're talking Milankovitch cycles. You're talking motherfucking lights.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So yeah, and we're all made of the same stuff.
Damn, I love the star analogy. Like when you think about like a star exploding, that's not like, it's actually like a beautiful thing. You like kind of blow up into more stars. You know what I mean? Like literally.
I'm a motherfucking star boy.
Yeah, I mean like a star, supernovas, and it just scatters all its stuff out into the universe for the universe to suck it up and roll it up into another Earth or another whatever the fuck. Yeah. And that's cool. And that's the same thing that's happening on all scales.
Or take it into the black hole garbage disposal and just burn.
Well, I mean, you don't really know what happens when it goes in that black hole garbage.
Right? Yeah, I don't know what happens. Crazy. Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
That's true. You don't know what happens.
Like,
tell me what happens.
I don't know. I don't know. Hey, he said, tell me
the God of garbage disposing will decide what happens when you go in.
You didn't put anything metal in there. I approve.
Yes.
It will pass on to the other.
I pray to Shinigami-san, the god of...
No. Shinigami is just a phrase that means death god. There's many different death gods in Shinto religion.
So my Shinigami of the garbage disposal, I pray to him very often. I leave notes. Thank you, Shinigami of the garbage disposal.
The only reason I know a lot about that is because I watched Death Note.
It's fine. I like having my language checked if it's correct.
Well, I didn't want to steal your thunder by knowing more about Shinigami, even though you brought it up.
Yeah.
I wanted you to step in, and I appreciate the Shinigami knowledge.
But tell me about the NATO stuff.
But it's actually, it's from Shinto.
Tell me about the NATO stuff. What you got on that?
I don't know shit about the NATOs.
Didn't bring about the NATOs.
Although I will
fight with Ares? Come on, dude.
Ares? Oh, yeah, no, you're right. I will say, though, my name is a derivative from the Roman god of Mars, which is the god of war.
Oh,
so I know a little bit about that.
Nice. I am the Book of Revelations. John.
Makes sense why they had to name you Marcus, because you were going to be Terrence.
I know.
And that would have been tragic.
I was going to be Parker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have loved it, but that's fine.
I would have loved it.
I would have loved
you
Parker.
You could technically change your name to
Parker. I could.
Parker Allen.
If anybody, Parker Allen.
Parker Garrett Allen.
But I'm just saying, if anybody has a fire name at this table, it's the John Allen for me.
John Allen's a good name.
And it's like Coca-Cola.
Well,
you know it's quintessential.
I've branded it. I've tried to, but
it's just John Allen.
John is
you could put that shit on anything.
John is the Book of Revelations.
Yeah. Oh, not the Book of Revelations, but the book of like Jesus coming to be or whatever.
No, the Apocalypse one was written by John.
Oh, okay. So John wrote the Book of Revelation.
Yeah,
so
John wrote the book.
John is not the Book of Revelation. So it's like there's a book.
The Gospels of John are also known as the Revelations. So
yeah, and you are kind of like a doomsbringer kind of dude.
I'd be bringing you 25-faced angels.
Did you hear about these vampire robots?
Did you hear about this woman that bathed in 650 little girl blood?
But I would love to talk about this. We were going to talk a little bit about anti-aging and stuff too. In the sense of like
the prolonging
our human struggle. With
all I know is I
like
seen
death.
What got me down that rabbit hole was seeing a Kim Kardashian vampire facial picture, and I was like, they should be you putting blood on their faces to stay young, huh?
Yeah.
And then I was like, blood.
Kim
young.
Kardashian did that.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a picture of her with a vampire facial.
It's funny because you see these like
facials.
in 1600s, like this woman like bathing in blood, but like there are medicinal uses for blood, and so it's like it's funny. It's interesting for me to see how even all the way back before we had like concrete sciences about it, people just intuitively knew.
I know,
dude,
right?
What the fuck, right?
I was waiting for the confirmation bias,
no,
but it's fucking crazy, right?
Have you seen? They also do this thing with like needle rollers where they needle roll their faces, and I'm like, bro, you look fine. Stop needling your face.
That's
you
a
look
good point.
Fine.
You look fine. Be yourself.
And you pay $1,000 to have somebody to get hepatitis C.
At least, you know, like the thing that the swimmer did. What was the fuck his name?
This a meme.
Michael
This
Phelps?
had to have been a meme.
I'm sure it's a meme. I mean, that just looks.
No, man, it's just the hottest new skin treatment.
Been running around the internet.
It's not from some 1600.
When she says I'm on my period.
Oh no! This is what this is what a POV. This is the lesbian POV. It's pretty good. Point of view. My partner is on her menstruation.
Yeah.
NSFW.
Yep,
that's funny.
But yeah, this is not going to be what I'm talking about.
Can we? I know. I just want to show really quick this countess though. Can we go to her Wikipedia?
Oh yeah, do we have a
in my
picture of her?
documents? In my documents, I have the name Countess Elizabeth Bathory of Exod of the Kingdom of Hungary.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that was your name back in the day. Countess Elizabeth Bathard de Sakask of the Kingdom of Hungary.
Elizabeth Bathory.
Bathory is
It's funny that her name is Bath.
Oh, I might be pronouncing it wrong.
You mean Bathory. Bathory.
But I'm just saying, like, even though, like, she bathed.
Bathory.
The most prolific female murderer as labeled by Guinness World Records.
She holds the world record for the most
Guinness
murders
World Record
of a woman.
Female murderer.
4 collaborators.
Now, I just
and her.
ask, does the death have to happen on your hands or just by your doing? Because, like,
you have to be the intent, I think.
I think because, like, I would say that probably Genghis Khan is then the number one for men, and then that would make him the number one overall.
Yeah, if you count war, then war's. Yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't know how that works.
I don't know if that all piles down to like one guy though.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, did she personally stab 650 women?
Just like her,
that's
her and her 4 homies.
That's a lot of fucking people for like 4
gang.
people.
Yo,
Yeah,
300 witnesses and survivors, as well as physical evidence and the presence of horribly mutilated, dead, dying, and imprisoned girls.
Yeah.
That was what.
So they got basically what you're saying is that the prosecution has a open and shut case on
very
this
clear.
bitch.
Very clear.
We
She
got
was-
that forensic evidence. This bitch was wrapped up.
They got
dog.
her. They rolled up in Dracula's
It reminds me
castle
of-
and said, "Freeze!
I can't.
Everybody put down the blood." and then they put her in trial, and they didn't execute her because she was rich.
Fascinating.
Excuse me. Yeah, they didn't execute her because she was rich. 650 girls is the highest number of victims that were cited.
So what? They
during
just
her trial.
prisoned her? They just imprisoned her.
Just imprisoned her.
for life?
Yeah, no big deal.
Just gotta make sure.
Keep her away from
650
some more girls.
All that blood got into the right.
Hey, but
age
actually, you
of
know what
54.
though? I think that's a better punishment. You
There-
have to force her to sit in a cell. I would have
54.
mirrored the entire cell just to make her watch herself get
Stories describing Bathory's vampiric
She didn't even get old.
tendencies.
She died at 54.
old. In 1600s, bro, that's old.
That's super old in
That's
1600s.
super old in the 1600s.
Your average life is like 40, 45 at that point. We're up to like what, 70s, 80s?
So you're saying the blood worked then?
I'm not saying the blood
The
worked.
blood worked is what he's saying.
I'm saying
I mean, Kim Kardashian.
I'm
looked pretty
saying
good.
stories describing her vampiric tendencies, such as the tale of her arrest. Oh no, I missed it. Such as the tale that she bathed in the blood of virgins to retain her youth, were generally recorded years after her death and are considered unreliable. Her story quickly became part of national folklore and infamy. Some insist she inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula, although there is no evidence to support this hypothesis. Nicknames and literary epithets attributed to her include the Blood Countess and Countess Dracula.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Yeah, so somebody made it up a long time ago. Anyways,
Prolific serial murderer who bathed in virgin
Alleged.
blood.
They just said alleged.
Allegedly. I know, but I'm saying like they have all the tortured remain. They have all that stuff, all that evidence. They were simply alleging
glove
her
didn't
motives.
fit, dog.
They're-
glove didn't fucking fit.
I feel you.
Ulterior motives. But that's how they used to get down, and this is the modern day master figures on the modern day version of wiping blood all over yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe not.
Or drinking
I don't know.
it, or whatever. Or
I'm gonna grab these papers.
So one of the
before you
big
start
tips.
Go ahead.
Papers. He's gonna grab some papers. He's got some papers.
Yeah, I was like, "What? You need me to sign something?"
Did you get
or
those
something?
papers I
Like,
sent you?
You get that thing I sent you?
No, he was just
Penance
saying he wanted to grab so that
is,
he could listen to the.
which is so obvious, is for longevity, don't die, right? So
Yeah,
talk about
that one
don't
works
die.
pretty well.
And specifically, you outline 4 killers.
Yeah.
Right. There's the 4 main killers, the top things right now that are taking us out, and you also relate with each of these 4 things, which was really beautiful to see how inflammation is tied into each of these 4 killers. So let's talk about the 4 killers and how
All right.
inflammation relates to each one.
It seems kind of ironic. Like, okay, you want to live forever, don't die. Done. That was the whole book. But then you say, all right, let's assume that you and me are average. So the numbers I'm going to talk about are for developed nations, but this includes the people who live on Pop-Tarts and ramen and margarine. So we're not average.
Our form or die.
There you go. Now, 4 things that are going to kill almost everyone listening to this, at least 80% of them, one or the other. One of them is cancer. And the rate of cancer is up dramatically. Something like 40% of people get it in their lifetime. The good news is that you die half as often from cancer as we used to.
This guy's got to live a very risk-free lifestyle.
What do you mean?
Like, I'm sure he doesn't take a lot of risks. Like, he's like a reader, stays at home a lot.
Eats really good.
Obviously.
Exercises every day.
But it's the same conversation I told you about before.
I mean, this is Dave Asprey. He's the guy who made Bulletproof and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say he's like afraid of risk because he's actually out here like experimenting on himself, like doing all this like new shit that's like not really proven to like do the thing that he's trying to get it to do and stuff like that. And he talks about like it hasn't been like confirmed by like the Guinness Book of World Records, but it's assumed that he has done the largest stem cell treatment of any person at one time. Like, so he's doing like weird things that you wouldn't necessarily. I mean, saying that it's a risk. I mean, maybe not. Like, I don't know how he lives like his personal life. He lives on a farm and shit.
I'm just saying, like this man doesn't skydive.
No, probably not. I mean, I don't know.
He's not driving a Lamborghini. You know what I mean?
I don't think so.
I've
literally never seen him next to a car. Actually,
if you're gonna invest so much in your health, like I told you, it would be a shame if the god of death just hit you with the bus, and so like that's the thing.
I'm sure that he's worried about that. Yeah, because that's his whole
if
thing.
Your whole shtick is I'm gonna live forever. I'm gonna live to be long. Then you don't want to die on some fuck shit, and that's what I'm saying. Like I can imagine he's not out here.
His fans and most people would give him a pass if he dies on some like. I got murdered or whatever, but like, if he like dies of a heart attack
or get cancer,
like, don't be dying of no. You can't get one of these 4 killers.
But it's not about his reputation. I mean, it is. It's just like, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just imagining him as the lifestyle.
I don't know.
You actually can cure cancer better than you could, although we're still far from curing it. A lot of times the cure is pretty brutal. But our survival rates are up because our early detection rates are better. But maybe not getting cancer is the right strategy here. That's the one that I'm pursuing. And also detecting early if you get it, because it's relatively easy to get rid of cancer. In fact, you and me, we have cancer right now, unquestionably. There are precancerous cells circulating in our bodies, and our natural killer cells are going through and knocking those things out. Like, it's just how the body works. So there's nothing to worry about there. But if you were to do a few things in your lifestyle, or maybe some of the more extreme things in here around cancer, you're saying, all right, I just reduced my chances. The next one that's likely to take you out is cardiovascular disease. In fact, it may be more likely than cancer in terms of death. And cardiovascular disease is stroke and heart attack, and it's rampant. It turns out we know more about that than ever before. Next up, we have type 2 diabetes, rampant. And type 2 diabetes is really evil because it increases your risk of dying from cancer and heart disease dramatically. And most people start out with that, and then they get one of the other ones. By the way, the other killer is Alzheimer's disease, about 10% of people.
Wow.
And diabetes increases your risk dramatically of all of those. So let's focus on diabetes. What is diabetes really? It's your body's inability to turn food and air into energy, into electrons. The same electrons that power your iPhone power you. What part of the cell does that? Might it be the mitochondria? Yes. So then how do we hack the mitochondria? Well, fortunately, that's an area of pretty strong expertise for me. It turns out every cell in your body And subcellular components like mitochondria, they have membranes. Now, you and me would think of a membrane as being, like a baggie, like a plastic layer. That's not really what they are. So think, okay, maybe it's more like a condom. A little bit stretchy, maybe some things can get through there. They're not like that either. What they are is more like when you have a sheen of oil on the top of water. It's a thin layer of tiny droplets of fat that repel water on both sides. So they kind of string together. Well, what fat might be important? And a big part of at least the diabetes angle in Superhuman, and Superhuman, by the way, is not a diet book. I mean, you've read it. There's some stuff about food, but this is about living to 180 and all the stuff you do. But from a nutritional perspective, if you were to eat the types of fat that your body needs to make healthy membranes, one of the biggest things that helps with highly functioning mitochondria, which then prevents diabetes, is have membranes that allow sugar and fat in and have all the components needed to make energy inside the cell. And that means 45% of the fat in your cell membranes is saturated fat. And this is why you can laugh when people say don't eat saturated fat. However, it's very interesting to note that you could say, oh, this is permission to eat a high-fat diet. Except it's not, because different fats do different things. And who would have thought? And you could say, well, margarine and corn oil, those are probably different than coconut oil. There must be some differences. It turns out the type of fat really matters. So you're not going to never eat any, quote, bad fats. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a choice between smoking a cigarette and eating a plate of French fries, smoke the cigarette. And the data is very clear on that. Nicotine actually has some anti-aging effects. Smoking is terrible for you, though. You shouldn't do it. But your inflammation is going to last for about 8 hours. The inflammation from the French fries is good for 24 hours. And that nasty fat is going to get taken up in your cell membranes.
Right.
And when it gets taken up, it's going to make free radicals.
So let's link that into the 7 pillars of aging that you referenced earlier. So zombie cells, mitochondrial mutations, shrinking tissues, these come straight from your book, cellular straitjackets, and extracellular junk. So which one of these does mold affect?
Every single one of them.
So let's just start off with the first one, shrinking tissues.
Well, as we age, we actually run out of stem cells and we have less tissue. So you've seen older people where they have very thin skin. And this is because your collagen replacement rate goes down over time unless you do something about it. And you have something called sarcopenia, muscle loss. And part of this is you used up the stem cells you had. And part of this is other changes that happen with aging. So when people are exposed to toxic mold, they tend to lose muscle and gain a lot of fat. They get fat the way I was fat, surprisingly. So you will see striated muscle where there's a lot of fat in the muscle, and you'll see actually inability to put on muscle because of chronic inflammation. And so that's one of the ones where people who are chronically exposed to any kind of poison like that, their body simply won't be able to synthesize protein because it's too busy making enzymes to try and detoxify. And then you get into these other ones. One of my favorite ones is the cellular straitjackets. And a lot of people have heard of amyloid plaque because they say, oh, that's what causes Alzheimer's disease. It's a symptom of Alzheimer's disease. And what amyloids are throughout the body are essentially cellular level calluses or scar tissue from chronic inflammation. So we all know if you do something and you have a bad knee or a bad elbow or something like that, it gets scar tissue and it just doesn't work as well as it did before. If you are doing things, whether it's being in a toxic mold environment, eating tons of things that expose you to toxic mold, like even fish, not toxic mold, that expose you to toxic metals, or you're getting terrible sleep, you're eating a lot of sugar, you're eating fried food, you're smoking, you're drinking, all of those things cause chronic inflammation, which itself is caused by a decline in your cell's ability to take food and air and turn them into energy. And when there's chronic inflammation, it will create these plaques. And over the course of decades, your cells become less flexible. And when they're less flexible, they're less functional. When they're less functional, you start to go down that decline of aging.
And the plaque is, I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts on it, but in a way it's less, it's more of a reaction. It's like a survival mechanism. It's not the problem. The plaque is sort of part of this thing, but the question is always like, what is your body trying to survive?
Yes.
Right?
And this isn't the kind of plaque inside your arteries we're talking about, just for people listening. This is an amyloid plaque, it's called. So basically, these are cross-linked proteins in your cells that wouldn't have been there had there not been chronic inflammation. And autoimmunity is a major trigger. It's something where your body gets inflamed by things in your own body. And if you have that going on, which I did, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in my mid-20s, which is when your immune system attacks your thyroid gland. You end up with even more of these plaques throughout your body. So your job is, how do I turn off inflammation?
Yeah, it's terrible.
And if I can do that via almost any mechanism, and usually,
well, you get a really high and tight haircut, very trendy, wear orange glasses, wear a nice tight shirt, and have a good tan.
He's trying to live, not trying to be cool.
Yeah.
No, I got him. I'm not shitting on his style. I'm just saying that's definitely one of the aspects of trying to be young.
Well, the eyes, I mean, his those are like blue light blocking glasses or whatever. So that's like.
He's protecting his eyes.
Yeah, he's like protecting his eyes.
Yeah.
I can't say anything about
How
his
old
hair.
is he now?
40-something, 45, 46.
He looks like 50s.
I'm putting him at.
Well, when he was in his mid-teens, like he talks about how because he lived in like a house with toxic mold, he lived in this really moldy basement, and that all of that mold gave him what he calls early onset aging because he had all of the things that somebody in their 60s or 70s would typically have, but he was having them in his teens and 20s because his whole shit was all fucked up. And so like that's, I mean, as you could tell just based on his haircut choice, it did some damage. It did some damage, and it's taken. He's trying to reverse it, but I mean, like the man had to go through hell and come out the other side to be able to tell us this stuff. So that's I give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, because I thought the same thing when I first seen him. I was listening to his podcast and then I seen him and I was like, well, he don't look too good for 40. Just I don't know if that's just because he's just like ugly or if it's because he looks like old. But then when I read his books and I learned his story, I was like, well, it sounds like that could do some damage to you. Like, it might not be easy to just, like, bounce right back from all that.
Yeah,
because he was, like, 300 pounds.
Serious thing,
like he said, he had, like, serrated muscles where there was, like, fat in his muscles and shit. Like, it was bad. Like a Wagyu beef.
His muscles fat.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, he looks like a clown.
No, I don't think he looks
I mean, he's real sciencey. That's why I like him.
really food is at the core of it. Food and sleep and things like that. You will actually live longer because you'll have less of these plaques. That's one of the 7 pillars of aging that you've just hacked.
And your story involves mold, but it's not a book about mold.
No,
it's really you're
not
using
at
that
all.
example as an example of these different factors in our life that can trigger these big killers that are out there. These chronic diseases for individuals.
Mold, for me, triggered early onset aging.
Right.
All these things that you're supposed to get when you're 60 or 70 in my late teens and 20s. And so it provided an opportunity for me to figure out how to hack them, or as I like to say, to die trying, because there was nothing more important than that. So I'm not going back. That's why I wrote Superhuman. You don't have to go there. Trust me, you don't want to go there.
So we talked about don't die.
Yep.
Now we're looking at the things that accelerate our aging. And I want to go through just a couple of these.
All right.
The first one was mitochondrial mutations.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
So mitochondria, you have anywhere between 200 to 15,000 mitochondria inside each cell in your body, except your red blood cells. They're free of mitochondria. And the cells that have the most energy requirement have the most of these things, the ones that are most important. So your brain cells and heart cells are the most studded with mitochondria. And they're smart little things. And you get all their DNA from your mom, at least if you're like most people. There's a few other weird corner cases where other stuff happens. But essentially, these are passed down from 9 women in somewhere 11, 12,000 years ago. All of us are related to one of 9 great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmothers. And problem is that these mitochondria mutate relatively easily over the course of your life.
But like mitochondria
and doesn't mean
like
you won't hand on the
bacteria.
right genes
They're
to
like
your
ancient
offspring.
bacteria that
But
co-evolved with us.
as they mutate, you don't make energy as well. And what happens every time when your mitochondria can't turn a molecule of food and a molecule of oxygen into an electron, it makes inflammation. Inflammation leads to diabetes and all the 4 killers. So these mutations build up and we don't have repair systems. So what do? There's practices that don't cost anything that are in Superhuman that cause mitochondrial biogenesis. There's relatively affordable, like $50, $60 affordable compounds that grow new mitochondria. There's certain types of exercise. There's types of sleep. So what you want to do is put your body through these brief periods of intense stress so the body looks around and goes, oh, that mitochondria can't really make heat right now, or it can't make energy right now. I guess I should kill it. Because your body will prune the weak mutated mitochondria and kick their asses out of there and grow fresh young ones if you give it the right instructions. Guess what? We have not been taught to give it the right instructions. Mother Nature was very elegant in our design because 150 years ago, there was probably some angry buffalo chasing you every now and then, or a tiger trying to eat you. And there was times you didn't have any food. And there were times you were a little cold. And the body would go, oh, I guess I should take care of this. And, well, we don't get any of that anymore. And it turns out those are important signals. They're just unpleasant. So how do we get those signals to happen in the minimum possible amount of time with the least inconvenience and the least cost? I'm down for that. And that's what's in Superhuman.
So the next one of these pillars, and I'm so grateful that you talked about this one, was zombie cells. Zombie cells. Can you talk about what that is?
As you age, your body has cells that stop doing their job, but they don't get out of the way. They call them senescent cells is the scientific term. So now we've got these cells that are sitting there. They make free radicals. They take up space, but they don't do their job. So the question now is, all right, if I want to be young when I'm old, how do I make sure I don't have very many zombie cells floating around? When you're young, you don't have many. As you age, they go up predictably.
So yeah, I think there was only one of them that he didn't explain in those little videos. We had zombies. Well, zombie cells. I think the ones that he didn't talk about were the extracellular junk, which are basically just things that hold on, I had a little note about it. Extracellular junk. Oh, right. So it's like different like waste substances, like the amyloid plaques or different things like that build up inside and around the cells that constrict it. In like they basically just disrupt the function of the cell, leading to inflammation. So it's kind of like this interesting. The way he describes it, to me, it pictures like a input-output kind of like programming thing, where a cell gets inputs like food and water or whatever, and then it either is able to do the function and it outputs the right output, or it outputs inflammation. Basically, like this error signal. And as you build up these error signals in your body over time, that's actually what's aging you. Yeah. And there's a big science right now called like geroscience, I think is what it's called. But it's basically, it talks about the link between, or the separation between your chronological age and your biological age. Sure. Like how old your body is compared to how old you are, like how long you've been alive, experiencing life. And everything that he talks about and a lot of the anti-aging stuff is just about reversing or stopping these damages that you get. It's like death from 1,000 cuts. If you can take less cuts, less severe cuts over a longer period of time, that time should extend out into the future further and further. Yeah. And so like that's kind of like the modern way that people are attacking it, is they're like, with science they're able to pinpoint these things that just naturally happen that we sometimes speed up in our own lives, and how do we reduce the speeding up of that by cutting out those activities, and how do we kind of repair some of the damage that we've already done with new medications and surgeries and shit like that. And he does wild shit, like in the book, like I've read that book Superhuman that he's talking about, and like in the book he does like stuff that costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars for like one procedure. And then like he said, there's also like glucosamine that you could take, which is like $20 on Amazon.
It's very interesting too how they've narrowed it down already to like because aging and death isn't necessarily the same thing, but it kind of is. Like he said, when you look at life's kind of like that like timeline hump, And
well,
so
yeah,
I mean,
assuming
when you're young and you're growing, and then you kind of cross that threshold, and then all of a sudden it's like cell junk, and everything starts like you start running out of
that starts
stem
accumulating,
cells,
yeah,
and like, everything starts to go on the decaying side of things. And I mean, like you said, I guess he's trying to prolong that hump there, like trying. I don't know if you can keep it going up. I mean, maybe that's a future for something for science, but
I see it like
definitely
a
trying
circle.
to stay on that like horizon line before you start that dip. And either way, it's cool to see that they've narrowed that down, because it is only a matter of time before they figure out how to stop that. How they stop the stuff from making more junk or being junk in general.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see where it takes us, and like we talked about earlier a little bit, where do we stop? You know,
Right.
like is 180 years good? Because I'm not necessarily against. I mean, I'm not against anything, but you want to prolong life, that's fine, you know. But I think, like you said, to what extent, is it that you're looking for? You know, because after a while, time becomes your prison more than it is your life.
And there will never. It doesn't seem like there will ever be an answer to death. So it's like, yeah, maybe we have all the science to live to 800 years old, and then a terrorist blows themselves up in your space station.
I think that's kind of what the from what I've heard from listening to Dave and some other people in the anti-aging field, it's more about trying, like, because like you said, there's not gonna be a way to just stamp out murder or accidental deaths. But aging is, and the problem, the diseases that come about from aging, like you said, the four main things that kill us are diseases, other than like if you take out accidental deaths, it's all diseases. And these diseases are increased by the things that they know are now linked with how we age. So if you can at least prolong that aging cycle, you can prolong how long it'll be until you get those diseases, or if you get them. And then that way you just have to worry about getting hit by buses or getting mugged and shot in the face or something like that.
Yeah, it kills a lot of your
it can't take out the random aspects of death, but the determined, even if you do everything, you skate by perfect health. I mean, eventually you'll just pass away in your sleep.
And like you said, most people aren't dying to murder or aren't dying to. I mean, car crashes tends to be one of the ones that are really high up there.
That's just because so many people do it.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time. Like so much time is spent, and it's just damage. Yeah,
in general, but outside of that, I mean, it's like,
I mean, it's mostly diseases that kill people.
Diseases and just the body
accidents
shutting down.
Yeah,
stuff.
and a lot of these diseases are caused by things we do, or inflamed by them.
Right.
You know, like if you die of heart disease because you smoked for 60 years and then died of heart disease, well then, I mean, you died of heart disease, but those cigarettes were, or with booze and liver disease, like all these things, like. You do this to your body long enough, and it's going to have some sort of repercussion.
Yeah, and that's why I think I like the anti-aging conversation takes it down to a cellular level, and that's something I've kind of learned through this conversation today. Is like it takes you down to a cellular level where death and life are actually happening.
Life and death are it's a constant give and go process.
Your skin is dying and shedding off of you
constantly,
all day, every day, and regrowing new skin.
Because they keep saying that your cells not doing your job. And for me, I only think of cells really on the skin level for some reason. I don't think about my liver cells and my blood cells.
Yeah, they're different.
They're all different.
My artery cells and all the just different little organisms.
That's one interesting thing about like the cellular straitjackets, like your arteries and stuff, like your artery cells can become stiffened, and that leads to high blood pressure, which can then lead to cardiovascular disease,
hypertension.
Exactly.
So I'm
Strokes.
starting to think of that, like when you smoke a cigarette or something, like you're right, it doesn't kill you, right? It doesn't kill you, but it might have killed 20, 25 cells. You know what I mean? Like a handful of cells just died off that cigarette, and it seems inconsequential, but that is your life.
It adds
you're
up.
Killing life in your body, or you're promoting life. Like if you start thinking about right now, Earth is either promoting life on the earth or it's killing life on the earth, but it does both, and I think we're the same thing. We're either killing ourselves or we're like promoting growth in ourselves.
Well, you're doing both at the same time. Like you literally can't stop yourself from dying little by little. It's just about like the ratio, like getting the balance.
I think
right.
We started the conversation earlier and saying there's some things you're in control of, some things you're not.
Some things you're not, yeah.
But I mean, the part that you are in control of, you want to make sure that you're
doing the right
things.
Doing
it the best you can. Or you don't want to make sure, but
it's a personal choice.
If you're into living a long life.
Well, this is how I'm like, look, if you want to live an overweight life, I don't care. Like that doesn't mean I don't hate you for it, but I will be damned if I'll let you come out here and say that you're healthy, because that's just not true. Like we just know it. It's just not true. Like you can't say that you're healthy. Like you might be mentally
healthy.
Well,
it's like you're setting some weird like bar of like this is healthy. Yeah.
Well, I guess you're right. Like it's like how much fat can you have? And it's
when did
overweight
cross over max threshold of this?
Overweight. There's like lines. It's not like a term that like overweight.
Yeah, but I think about a guy.
Thing.
I think about like a big barrel-chested super gut that can go out there and lift the fucking Hercules stone and throw it across the room, and I'm like, well, he's overweight.
Yeah.
Well, he looks like a healthy motherfucker.
I've always thought that was interesting. The fact that when you see like over the years, the most like the strongest man in history is never like a jacked like Vin Diesel bodybuilder dude. It's like a big kind of fat guy. Yeah, but I think it has something to do with the fact like they're naturally bigger, so their muscles had to get bigger to move around their bodies. I don't know. averagely intelligent
secret race of giants that came into our bloodline.
I wasn't going that way.
Middle Earth orcs.
Yeah,
like
orc bloodline.
Like,
we've been suppressing the orc bloodline. Yeah,
the Cro-Magnons, you know.
Yeah, all that Neanderthal stuff that we have.
Get those strong boys out of there. I mean, can you imagine being in like a physical confrontation with a chimpanzee? It would not end well for you. Now, sit down to do an SAT test. We know who's gonna win there.
Yeah, we're beating that chimp.
Yeah, but let the chimp pick up the desk. It's game over.
I'd rather fight the chimp than the gorilla, though. So it's like,
I would also rather fight a chimp than a gorilla.
So
if you guys want to branch off into animal fights,
the big
we could.
Fuckers or the heavy motherfuckers.
I mean, really, I'd rather not fight
but
any
like
of them.
Strong is not healthy either.
Because I'd like to bring bears into the conversation.
That's true. Just because you can throw the Herculean stone doesn't mean that you don't have like a terrible liver.
You're healthy. Because that's the same thing too. You can be really skinny, but it doesn't mean you're healthy either.
You can be skinny fat, meaning that you eat like a fat person, but you just have a high metabolism.
Or you could just be skinny, like because you don't eat anything at all.
That could be true too.
Like, you know, so I think
not getting the proper nutrients.
Health is and I think that's why people say like stop. Yeah, it's like overweight isn't really healthy or unhealthy. You know, like it could be unhealthy to you, right? But it like for example, you're a healthy person, yes or no?
Well, I don't know.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like it's like you're healthy.
I think I'm healthy,
but you also drink. You know what I mean? Or you also do like XYZ. So it's like, am I healthy? Like I eat a fuck ton of sugar. You know, I do a lot of things that are healthy. You know, that would, but also you said you're doing both at the same time. You're always killing yourself and promoting. But I think you know, I don't care what anybody else does. What I thought about from it was I was like, you know, I gotta start thinking of myself as not thinking of myself as a singular life.
Right.
But I am a collection of life.
Right.
You know, like you said, there's life happening in me, around me, on me.
You are the collective consciousness.
Right? Life is losing on me, around me. Cells dying in me every day. People dying.
Every time you wash your hands, you kill all the bacteria on your hands.
Dead.
Millions dead.
That's like this exchanging process. I love that the more I think of all different types of processes, they all seem the same. It's like breathing. You know? It's like in with something and out with something else. And that's what we're all doing. It's like everything is doing this like breathing thing.
And I feel that leads you to my favorite idea of all of these, which is I am you and you are me.
Yeah.
And you are him and I am him as well.
100%. That's why I'm not afraid of death.
Yep.
That's why I'm literally not afraid of death.
It's just another part of it.
It's you know, I really kind of bought into this. It's a God thing, but it's energy. You know, they call it like I'm like energy. He said those little electrons in your cells that are like giving you life and stuff. Like these little things that energize your body to make it animate itself. That shit's just flowing in and out of everything and everybody, and it goes away from you, and you collect it up somewhere else, and it becomes this or it becomes that, but you never really die. And that's why everybody says it's like when you get back to it, what is it? It's accepting and it's loving, and it's like, oh, I feel one with it. I've been here my whole life, and it's because you have. You literally this force is just you're feeling it on a magnified scale.
Because whatever happened to you before you were born is what is happening to you after you die.
That's exactly what I think. Exactly
I love that bit when Bill Burr did he was asking, I think it was on his podcast or maybe one of his specials, but he was talking about how when he gave up his religion, he was like scouting out other religions to like look into, and he found Lutherans, and he was like, I was so surprised that these people who like for all intents and purposes were like Christians, but they don't believe in like an afterlife. And he was like, so what happens when you die? And the guy was like, well, you remember what it was like before you were born? No. Yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah, right? I literally think it's just like that.
It's just like that.
And so, I mean, I've come to peace with it. But I would love to wrap up this conversation with what I was talking about and like my personal journey with this stuff. And I'd love to hear a little bit of y'all's, like where you've kind of settled at on this topic of your own death. Not, you know, maybe not just your own death, but just like, you know, like you said, death in general is going to happen to you, and it's going to happen to everybody around you eventually. And so I took a long time to think about it, and there's a couple core tenets that I came up with. It said it's completely irrational to be afraid of something that's happened to every single person. Like you said, it's like, were you afraid of being born? You weren't. You just fucking popped up, and then it was what it was. I think that's death too. And like when I got here, I wasn't like I was like life. You know, it's like it's all right. It's chill. I can't imagine. I always used to think too, like if there's a God or something for real, I'm like, well, if he wanted to be a dickhead, he could just be a dickhead right now. I can't imagine that, like, I get over on the other side, and he's like, you fucked it up. Now I got something for that ass, you know? It's like, if he really wanted to fuck me up, he could do it right now. Like, this place isn't made of brimstone and hell or bad things. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of goodness. A lot of things I see that aren't that usually come from us and like our inability to get down with that.
Human nature seems to be the thing that causes a lot of pain and misery.
Right. Like, is that fear?
Not
like,
just
we're
human.
all afraid.
Just
of,
nature.
Well, I mean, but like, it's our ego. It's our like consciousness. It's our ability to perceive the fact that we're here. Remember, it's a star. You think a star is afraid of blowing up? You think a star at the end of its life is like, oh no, not supernova. It just fucking goes supernova. It doesn't have to question it. We as human beings have this collective consciousness or this ability to perceive.
What about the squirrel?
What about the squirrel?
The squirrel that's like, I'm about to fucking die.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, do they have like a?
We can't measure it or perceive it, but
I
don't really think
is it like
that
a
they
fear?
do. I don't think that they
instinct?
do because they don't perceive the way that they live life the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they
it's
don't
not
live
like they're
life the same
questioning
way,
life. So if the squirrel doesn't even ask what's gonna happen tomorrow, so why would it be asking what's gonna happen after I die? You know what I mean? It's like that's only a burden of humanity. Only because you can take your consciousness and move it fast forward and backwards in time.
Well, I guess it would depend on what your definition of fear would be. Because I mean, the squirrel avoids death.
Like if a crocodile comes crabbling up
like
to
attack a squirrel, it will run away from you.
True.
So it's not like it's like ready to like die. Like you said, there's like a biological thing. Like the process of life wants to continue itself. So on lower conscious levels, like an animal or something like that, it doesn't have a articulated like, oh, I'm afraid of dying. It's just like get away from the predator.
But you see what I'm saying though? It's just purely on intuition. It doesn't have to calculate it and think and like, you know what, maybe I won't run from the
Well, that's
alligator.
why I said it depends on how you
maybe the alligator won't get me.
I just want to die.
It's
like
out.
if you define fear as anything you avoid is you're being afraid of it, then you could say that the squirrel is afraid of death.
I think
afraid
of
pain.
I think of fear of more of the ability to perceive what you'll lose.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like you're afraid of death, not because of the necessarily act of death. It's that you love life so much
that you're losing life.
You're losing life. Remember, I told you we're always afraid of what we'll lose, and you don't know what's over there, but you know you like this.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to cross from what you know you already love into unknown. So it's our ability to perceive both sides of what we think it'll be because we have no idea. I don't think the squirrel does that. I don't think the squirrel is like, well, what if I do this? And like because why would the fuck would it run across those little, like, you know what I mean, telephone pole things? I'm like, fuck.
It's more so like fight or flight, like these natural instincts.
Right. They run off of those. And that's what I've noticed and what a lot of scientists seem to notice and stuff but we have that too. Like you said, we don't have to. If a train's coming at you, you're going to jump. You don't think about it. It's not something that you work towards or, you know, it's just, gotta go, you know? Like, so I think that they have that, but that's not fear. You know what I mean? That's not irrational fear, what I call irrational fear, which is I'm thinking it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it up. And so therefore it's this.
It's more of a subconscious programming of their genetics that says that thing right there is going to eat you and it's pain and you avoid that pain by running away.
I said, you know, like if you touch a hot stove, you pull away before you've actually realized that it's hot. Like, it does it on its own.
It does it on its own. It's because your subconscious is out here running things and stuff too. And that's why it's been important for me to establish my relationship with the death, because that fear is a subconscious one. It's not one that you're thinking of all the time or anything, but it's running on the background and you're making choices based on that. And so as long as you're always, you haven't gotten to a place where you're at peace with that, then it's afflicting you in some weird way and you might not know that. And so I've noticed that
making decisions that you might not otherwise make,
but based on that little fear. And so I found in my life personally, the more that I just like you said, lean into these things that I don't quite understand and just become at peace with it. So I'm just like, it is what it is, you know, like it's part of the process. I'm a part of the process. I'm here for it. And then it's given me, this was the point I wanted to make, it's given me a blessing. It's turned into just like that when you worship a god or something, or what does it mean to worship? I think it's just to focus or to give your energy and your attention towards
gratitude, appreciation,
right, something, right? Exactly. So when I do that towards death, when I look and I give death my attention, I say, hey, you're a real thing and it's going to happen one day. And there's nothing I can do to stop that. No reason complaining about it. But knowing that, consciously knowing that all the time, what do I want to do with today? You know what I mean? It's different. All of a sudden today has life. today, because it's the antithesis of death.
Today means something.
It means something. It has purpose. It has initial. It's just inherent, right?
Right.
Because one day I won't be, and I know that when I won't be, I'm gonna wish that so I should do that. You know, it gives me that perspective to make this worth something, because without that of one day you won't have, there's no real appreciation. You know, there's no real appreciation. So death has given me appreciation for life, and so now I'm with it. I'm with it. Like you said, nothing's something. I'm not rushing towards it. Why give up one good thing just because you know you're gonna get something else good later? Like, I'm here for the good now, and I'm here for the good later. So it's helped me a lot. I think that having these conversations out loud and people really taking the time and cry the deaths out and experience it and see what it means and really come up with, you know, your own little tools.
One of my takeaways too is the grieving process is real. Like going through steps, acceptance, mourning, all those things. Like, you know, I've had these close friends of mine die, you know, in my later life.
Yeah.
And I've kind of gone through stages with them, and I seem to be accepting death a little bit better than that first one that hit me like a ton of bricks.
Right.
And I think it's because I'm accepting that there are stages to it, and that if you go through those stages and you allow them to happen, the natural process will then allow you to enjoy the memory of them.
True.
Right.
True. So true. I love that you put that, because one of the things that was big on me too was, remember I said it gave me that presence and that gratitude and that like real time. So now I don't worry. I'm good. I don't worry about fearing the death, like you said. Like, my mom's gonna die one day. I'm not afraid of that, because I focus so much on her life, like, and I've been here for it, knowing that one day she's gonna pass away, that I know her.
Yeah.
Like, I know her in my memories and stuff. So when she passes away physically, I know that it goes with me. You know, like all the memories, all the things. I know what my mom will say. If I'm in like something, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I know what my mom would be like, you know, suck it up. You know, it'll be all right, son. You can do this and that. And blah. So in that way, she's always there. But a lot of people don't have that, because you spend your whole life
trying to ignore it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever.
Having a bad relationship with them
or whatever, because you don't think about the fact that, hey, one day you know what I mean? You don't get to take it for granted like that. So
my quote of the day today was a Jordan Peterson quote, and he said, "You have to face the abyss voluntarily." And in my explanation of the quote in the story afterwards was that I don't believe that there's an easy way through life.
Yeah.
There's only hard ways through life, and the hardships are different for one path than the other. But at least with one path, you pick your hardships. You can pick the hardship of choosing to eat well and choosing to work out, rather than the hardships of heart attacks and shit like that later. You can choose one over the other, and for some reason, there's in the choosing of the hardships, it empowers you. There's something, like you said, it gives you something back by acknowledging it, by accepting that in, by saying, I'm bringing in these hardships. I'm going to bring them on my own, and I'm going to let them have their way with me. And they teach you something also. It's not there just to hurt you. It's actually there to inform you of something. Like we always say, you know, like, your problems aren't actually problems. They're lessons. Lessons are blessings. So learn your lessons and then count your blessings.
The same thing I was thinking when
pain is meant to be overcome.
Yeah. You know, it's like you never realize how capable. Same thing with death. Like, you're so capable of handling that situation. You think you're not, you know, and that's why you're afraid of it. It's like,
you can do anything.
But you can
do
you
anything.
were born with the power and the capability to handle all that stuff. So it's just about knowing that, you know. But either way, it's been an interesting conversation, man.
This has been a deep one.
For real, man. Like
deep
I said,
dive.
I gotta applaud you boys. Not a lot of people can talk about it, so, you know.
The psychological aspect of the show is one of the easier aspects. The research, you know, that's, you know, getting the right, finding the right stuff, you know.
Bringing the right information and stuff, I think.
But damn, the philosophical side, man.
Oh, boys, that's
I
what
love
I'm
getting
Some
into
of the
that.
things you said, dude, you said some shit that I hate that I forgot it already, but it was like, that shit blew me away. I was like, damn, man.
Make it a clip.
What was it? I'll find it when I'm editing this. I'm like,
It'd be a clip.
That's why thank God I watched the show.
Hey, clip that boy right
clip
there.
That, yeah,
hey,
give me that
that.
Matt clip. All right, man, we appreciate y'all, and we'll see you again soon.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this.